Chapter 28:13 Powerful Showdown. Lu Xinglua spoke in a low tone, but his words echoed throughout the area. Everyone turned reflexively to look at Fire Dance and the others from the three guilds. A match? This is going to be interesting. I wonder if Zero Wing will accept it? If they don't, they'll embarrass themselves in front of the various powers Starlink invited. Although Zero Wing had arrived with great momentum, Starlink's side came prepared as well. Just by looking at the 5 Tier 4 players on Starlink's side, one could tell that Zero Wing held no advantage in this situation at all. Not to mention, the two sides had clashed with each other many times now and suffered severe losses. Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor had already begun living off their past gains. Their stockpile of weapons and equipment was dwindling, and they were starting to have difficulty compensating their members for their losses. Simply put, only morale was keeping the three guilds alive now. However, if the three guilds refused or lost in the match, morale in the three guilds would plummet. At that time, the performance of the three guilds members would definitely be affected greatly. Upon realizing this situation, the spectating crowd was in awe of Lu Xinglua's clever move. Originally, everyone thought Starlink was merely trying to get Zero Wing to remove the seal on Sky Spring City. However, if Starlink got the three guilds' top combatants to remain in Starlink by winning a match, Sky Spring City's seal would no longer be a problem. While the spectators were having a quiet discussion among themselves, Fire Dance, Violet Cloud, Unyielding Heart, and Illusory Words briefly exchanged glances. Fine. Fire Dance answered as she looked at Lu Xinglua. What kind of match do you have in mind, Guild Leader Xinglua? Their original plan was to break into Starlink's residence and rescue their captured members. However, now that Starlink had gained another Tier 4 combatant, the risk of their plan had undoubtedly increased. Not to mention, the Secret Hand Association's NPCs might be hiding inside the residence. At that time, they would have to go up against not only those NPCs but also 5 Tier 4 combatants. This would truly put them in a tough spot. After all, anyone capable of reaching Tier 4 was no pushover. In fact, they were among the best in God's domain when it came to combat standards, weapons, equipment, legacies, etc. Simple. Both sides will each select one person for a duel, and we will decide the winner in one match. Lu Xinglua said, smiling. What do you think of this, Commander Fire Dance? Fine. Fire Dance agreed without hesitation. Good. After hearing Fire Dance's response, Lu Xinglua turned to Miracle Dragon and said, Our side will have Miracle Dragon represent us. At Lu Xinglua's words, Miracle Dragon leaped into the air and hovered above Starlink's residence. He then looked down quietly at the Zero Wing contingent, evidently prepared for a fight. Big Sis Fire, let me take him on, Violet Cloud volunteered. I haven't gotten a chance to fight against other Tier 4s ever since I reached Tier 4. I don't want to miss out on this. Fire Dance and the others exchanged looks at Violet Cloud's words, hesitation appearing on their faces. The fact that Lu Xinglua dared let Miracle Dragon represent Starlink's side meant that he was confident of victory. Otherwise, he would have had a veteran Tier 4 player take to the field instead. Of course, Lu Xinglua could have made such a decision because the other Tier 4 players had long since exposed their cards during the past few battles. In contrast, Miracle Dragon had only gotten promoted to Tier 4 recently, so the moves he possessed were still unknown to Zero Wing's side. Alright, but be careful. In the end, Fire Dance still nodded and consented to Violet Cloud's request. Their side couldn't afford to lose this battle. However, Zero Wing's veteran Tier 4s faced a similar problem to Starlink's veteran Tier 4s. On the other hand, Violet Cloud was not the slightest bit inferior to the three of them in combat standards. Now that she had gotten promoted to Tier 4 as well, it went without saying her strength rivaled theirs. Hence, letting Violet Cloud represent Zero Wing's side wasn't exactly a bad decision. Unyielding Heart and Crimson Emperor did not oppose Fire Dance's decision. Instead, they warned Violet Cloud to stay out of melee range from Miracle Dragon. Otherwise, Miracle Dragon's lightning-quick attacks would devastate a magical class player like Violet Cloud. Afterward, Violet Cloud similarly leaped into the air and hovered 100 yards away from Miracle Dragon. I lost to Gentle Snow last time because of my basic attributes, but you won't be as lucky as Gentle Snow. Miracle Dragon said as he looked at Violet Cloud with a cold and arrogant gaze. Because I will come at you seriously this time. After Miracle Dragon finished speaking, energy rippled out from his body and instantly enveloped the vicinity. Meanwhile, those caught within his mana domain immediately felt their bodies become incomparably heavy. Even Tier 3 players found it difficult to move their bodies. A supergravity domain? Fire Dance frowned subconsciously when she experienced Miracle Dragon's mana domain. This was the first time she had experienced such a powerful mana domain. Although this supergravity domain didn't affect the basic attributes of players, the increased gravity would affect the player's mobility significantly. In fact, Fire Dance estimated that her mobility would be halved because of this mana domain. Needless to say, magical class players that didn't possess much strength would fare even worse in this mana domain. Before Fire Dance and the others could recover from their shock, Miracle Dragon unsheathed the silver greatsword he carried. Immediately, not only did the intensity of the aura he exuded skyrocket, but another ripple of energy spread out from his body. Unlike the earlier energy ripple, this one caused the flowing mana in the air to stagnate. Impossible. Unyielding Heart couldn't help doubting his eyes as he looked at Miracle Dragon. 2 domains. It was already incredibly difficult for a Tier 4 player to obtain even 1 mana domain. Hence, any Tier 4 player that succeeded in doing so would become a force to be reckoned with even among other Tier 4 players. Now, Miracle Dragon revealed that he actually possessed 2 mana domains. This completely shattered Unyielding Heart's understanding of mana domains. Meanwhile, Lu Xinghua and the others on Starlink's side who were standing at the residence's entrance, smiled when they saw the reactions of Fire Dance and the others from the 3 guilds. Commander Fire Dance, get ready to lose. Miracle Dragon has the supergravity domain and the space freezing domain. He is the absolute bane of magical classes, Lu Xinghua said, smiling calmly as he looked at Fire Dance. Of course, the outcome won't change even if you have someone else take to the field. Under the effects of these 2 mana domains, nobody can defeat Miracle Dragon in single combat. A dual domain wasn't just a simple addition of 2 mana domains. Instead, the effects of the 2 mana domains would overlap and generate exponentially greater results. When Miracle Dragon activated both of his mana domains, he could take on 2 of Starlink's veteran Tier 4s simultaneously and still hold his ground. Meanwhile, the spectators also stirred at this scene. They never thought a person could have 2 mana domains. As expected of the Sword Freak, even Black Flame will most likely have trouble going up against Miracle Dragon. I know, right? Black Flame only managed to stand out because he was lucky to reach Tier 4 before everyone else. But in a situation where both sides are at Tier 4, nobody can tell who is truly the best at the sword without a fight. How can the secret pavilion just arbitrarily label Black Flame the strongest? The Rubberneckers were astonished by Miracle Dragon's abilities. After all, this was the first time any of them had seen a dual domain. One could also easily determine the dual domain's effects just by looking at the Tier 3 players enveloped within it. At this time, these Tier 3 players were already kneeling on the street from the overbearing pressure. This result was much greater than that of the mana domain Shifeng had displayed previously. Commander, should we intervene now? Lifeless Thorn asked as he looked at Shifeng. This dual domain is going to be a tough nut to crack. If it's just Violet alone, I'm afraid, no, we'll continue watching, Shifeng replied, shaking his head and smiling. If we take action now, everyone's going to think that Zero Wing has no capable people to rely on. But that space freezing domain prevents the use of instantaneous movement. Miracle Dragon is also known for his speed and strength. Her chances of victory are really slim, Lifeless Thorn argued. While he understood what Shifeng was trying to say, Miracle Dragon's dual domain was a perfect counter for magical class players. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You relax. Chuckling, Shifeng looked at Violet Cloud and said, having more mana domains isn't necessarily an advantage. Moreover, Violet's strength is no longer the same as before. As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, They saw Violet Cloud take out Death's Sigh. However, compared to before, the current Death's Sigh released a much more terrifying aura. The instant Violet Cloud wielded it, an aura of death instantly spread into the surroundings. A dual domain might be amazing, but a lone mana domain isn't necessarily inferior. After saying so, Violet Cloud operated her mana body at maximum capacity. The next moment, energy rippled out from her body, instantly pushing back Miracle Dragon's dual domain and preventing it from extending more than 30 yards from Miracle Dragon. The difference between the mana domains of both sides was instantly determined. Chapter 28:14 The Astromancer's Might. What's going on? Why did a dual domain lose to a single domain? The various experts looking up at the sky were bewildered when they saw Miracle Dragon's dual domain getting suppressed. They couldn't understand how a single domain could win against a dual domain. After all, the mana and pressure Violet Cloud's mana domain radiated were both weaker than those of Miracle Dragon's dual domain. This is interesting. This little beauty has actually surpassed Miracle Dragon in knowledge and control over mana by a large margin, a handsome youth wearing 100 Ghosts' Guild emblem said, a faint smile appearing on his face as he looked at Violet Cloud. I never thought there would be such a talent in Zero Wing. The people here think that just having high basic attributes is sufficient. They don't know that what's most important for Tier 4 players aren't attributes or combat standards but control and understanding over mana, sneered the beautiful woman with short, blue hair standing beside the handsome youth. A mana domain is the result of making an area's mana into one's own. Miracle Dragon can operate the mana of his 2 mana domains only at a basic standard. How can he possibly win against someone with better control over mana? Looking at Violet Cloud with fascination, the handsome youth said, but this little beauty is quite the genius. We can have her join us and become one of our outer supporting members. Abyss, don't go acting on your old habits again. Don't forget why we came to this continent. The short-haired woman warned. Relax. I know what I'm doing. Nobody on this continent is a match for me. Zero Wing's alliance will crumble for certain this time. Nothing will change even if that black flame shows up. If this little lady wants to protect Zero Wing, she'll have no choice but to beg me. She'll definitely take the bait at that time, the handsome youth said, smiling. The short-haired beauty carrying a battle axe did not refute the youth's statement. After all, it was indeed true that they could keep Zero Wing alive with just a word. While the pair from 100 Ghosts were conversing, Miracle Dragon had taken action. Unfazed by the fact that his dual domain had been suppressed, he flew within 50 yards of Violet Cloud and brandished his greatsword. 9 extreme slashes. Tier 4 legacy skill, Light Shatter. 9 sword lights tore through space and instantly appeared around Violet Cloud. Moreover, as if to prove that Miracle Dragon had reached the domain realm already, the 9 sword lights moved around Violet Cloud like a bunch of lively monkeys, their attack trajectories unpredictable. Facing this tricky move, Violet Cloud flicked her staff and activated Blink, instantly appearing 30 yards away and dodging the 9 sword lights in the nick of time. Boom! A moment after Violet Cloud used Blink, the 9 sword lights converged on her original location and exploded, transforming the area within a 20-yard radius into an empty void. The power of this attack practically rivaled that of superior mythic monsters of the same level. However, before Violet Cloud could catch her breath, several more sword lights appeared around her, to which she responded by using Blink again. This process repeated itself over and over, the sword lights hounding Violet Cloud like her shadow. This scene dumbfounded the spectating crowd. After all, at this time, Miracle Dragon looked more like a ranged player than a melee player. Every time he brandished his great sword, several sword lights would appear around Violet Cloud. Despite the distance between the two players, it was as if Miracle Dragon were right beside Violet Cloud. Miracle Dragon really isn't holding back. Thousand Miles, who was standing at the entrance, burst into laughter as he watched the fight in the sky. At this rate, the fight will end in less than 10 seconds. Miracle Dragon was a magic swordsman. His class perfectly combined magic with the sword. The class was proficient in melee combat as well as ranged combat. While it was indeed amazing that Violet Cloud managed to render Miracle Dragon's dual domain useless, thanks to the Light Shatterer skill, Miracle Dragon could still thoroughly exhibit the might of his godly fast attacks. You might have a lot of movement skills, but while my Light Shatterer skill is active, it won't matter where you run to, so just surrender obediently. Miracle Dragon said, smirking as he watched Violet Cloud constantly dodging his attacks. Most people might expect him to be at a disadvantage when going up against magical class players, but he was a magic swordsman. It didn't matter whether he fought at close quarters or range. He was proficient in both forms of combat. Meanwhile, Light Shatterer had a 3-minute duration. Even if Violet Cloud had many movement skills, she definitely wouldn't have enough to last 3 minutes. And once she ran out of movement skills, all she could do was wait for death. Thank you for your warning. Looking at the arrogant magic swordsman, Violet Cloud smiled faintly and said, I might not be able to dodge them if I'm alone, but what if there are multiple copies of myself? After saying so, Violet Cloud swung her staff and summoned several dozen identical copies of herself within her vast starry domain. Then, the figures of Violet Cloud and her copies turned blurry, becoming indistinguishable from one another. Doppelgangers? Miracle Dragon was momentarily startled. No, their auras are too weak to be doppelgangers. They should only be illusions, and there should only be one physical body. Watch me break this move of yours. Miracle Dragon began brandishing his great sword wildly. Unlike before, his sword lights no longer converged on a single point. Instead, they scattered all around Violet Cloud's starry domain, leaving empty voids wherever they passed and turning the starry domain into a place of death. After the series of rampant attacks, black voids filled the starry domain, which covered a 300-yard radius, this outcome thoroughly demonstrating the power of a Tier 4 magic swordsman. You refuse to come out even in death? Miracle Dragon was puzzled as he looked at the dark void before him. His attacks had left no corner untouched. While Tier 4 players could indeed survive inside the empty void, they could do so only for a short period. They would still die if they lingered. As soon as Miracle Dragon finished speaking, however, Violet Cloud came strolling out of the black void entirely unscathed. It was evident that Miracle Dragon's rampant assault just now did not affect her. She avoided everything? Miracle Dragon was surprised by this scene. He knew the speed of his attacks very well. Only by using skills like Blink could magical class players dodge them. Relying solely on physical movements for evasion was impossible. Tanking his attacks would also be utterly foolish, and he would be more than glad to see Violet Cloud try. After all, her defense was bound to slip up against his swift and violent attacks. Nevertheless, Violet Cloud remained unscathed. Even her robe was intact. This proved that Violet Cloud had actually dodged all his sword lights. Amazing! I didn't even have time to cast my spells while dealing with those fast attacks. Thankfully, my starry domain just so happens to counter you. Otherwise, this really would be a tough fight. Violet Cloud sighed ruefully as she looked at the dark space around her. While the doppelgangers she summoned might seem like illusions, they were, in a certain sense, real. This was because she could freely shuttle her real body between these doppelgangers. This ability was much stronger than her blink skill. Moreover, while this ability cost concentration and mana to use, it didn't have a cooldown. And once her control over this ability improved, she could potentially summon thousands of copies of herself within her starry domain. Little girl, you're as arrogant as your guild leader. I refuse to believe you can dodge my attacks forever. Miracle Dragon said. He then held up his great sword in preparation for another round of attacks. However, before Miracle Dragon could brandish his weapon, shadow blades emerged from the dark void behind Violet Cloud, numbering 600. Miracle Dragon, did you think I was hiding in the void just to dodge your attacks? Chuckling softly, Violet Cloud said, I spent a long time preparing to deal with you. Now, let me see how you block these 600 shadow blades. As soon as Violet Cloud finished speaking, the 600 shadow blades carrying devastating power began raining down on Miracle Dragon like a hail of bullets. Miracle Dragon knew that there was no way he could dodge them all. Immediately, he activated his Berserk skill, drastically increasing his basic attributes and doubling his attack speed. The next moment, he brandished his great sword, blocking the shadow blades one after another in rapid succession. A shadow blade would get sent flying away every time Miracle Dragon swung his great sword. However, under Violet Cloud's control, these shadow blades would quickly correct their trajectories and attack him once more. The space above Starlink's residence transformed into a dark void, the shockwaves of the battle spreading throughout Sky Spring City. Rather than a clash between players, the duel between Violet Cloud and Miracle Dragon looked more like a clash between monsters. From watching this battle, the Tier 3 players present thoroughly understood how insignificant they were in front of Tier 4 players. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Despite Miracle Dragon's best efforts, there were just too many shadow blades. Moreover, Violet Cloud was also constantly making subtle adjustments to her attack patterns. As a result, roughly 20 seconds later, Miracle Dragon finally slipped up, and one shadow blade penetrated his defense. Just one hit took away 1/4 of Miracle Dragon's HP. Moreover, within a few more seconds, he slipped up 3 more times. The next moment, the clash in midair came to an abrupt halt, and Miracle Dragon's eyes closed reluctantly as his body fell into the compound of Starlink's residence. Only Violet Cloud and her 600 shadow blades remained hovering in the air, the frightening aura they released instilling fear into everyone. Guild leader Lu Xinglua, you can release our people now. Chapter 28:15. How bold of you. At Violet Cloud's words, Lu Xinglua's complexion turned ashen. Never did Lu Xinglua think that Miracle Dragon would lose. Moreover, the man had lost so miserably. Now, not only did Lu Xinglua fail to humiliate Zero Wing, but the morale on his side had even suffered a hit. This situation put him at a loss as to how to respond to Violet Cloud. Lu Xinglua wasn't the only one taken aback by this outcome. The various major powers were similarly stunned beyond belief. Everyone present could clearly tell that Miracle Dragon was monstrously powerful, yet Violet Cloud had actually displayed even greater strength. At this time, they even started to think that Violet Cloud could take on 2 or 3 Tier 4 experts simultaneously and still hold the upper hand. So, this is Zero Wing's strength? Amazing! With this, Starlink and the various superpowers will have to act more humbly. From how leisurely Violet Cloud had defeated Miracle Dragon, it was evident she still had strength to spare. This meant that even though Zero Wing's side had 1 Tier 4 expert less than Starlink's side, the latter still wouldn't hold any advantages. Beautifully done. Unyielding Heart praised as he looked up at Violet Cloud. Now that Starlink's side has 1 less Tier 4, even if Lu Xinglua goes back on his word, we still have a much greater chance of rescuing our people. Illusory words nodded in agreement with Unyielding Heart. This duel held great importance for both sides. If Lu Xinglua handled this matter poorly, he would become the laughingstock of God's domain. After all, Lu Xinglua had overreached himself. He had actually planned to rely on this opportunity to elevate Starlink into an existence on par with the 5 great super guilds. Only, his grand plan had already been foiled right at the very first step. If he weren't standing in public right now, Lu Xinglua would have most likely spat out blood already. When everyone thought Lu Xinglua was going to lose his mind, the man actually smiled. Good. Very good. As expected of one of Zero Wing's peak experts. Your strength is truly astonishing, Lu Xinglua said, chuckling as he looked up at Violet Cloud. Fine. We'll let your people go. Guild leader? Sword Demon, who had also reached Tier 4, was stunned by Lu Xinglua's words. He never thought that Lu Xinglua would release Zero Wing's people so decisively. They'll grow even more fearless if we let their people go. It doesn't matter, Lu Xinglua said as he glanced at Sword Demon nonchalantly. Release them. Sword Demon had no choice but to release the 3 guilds' captured members. The next moment, Alluring Summer, Shadow Sword, Mu Lingsha, Blue Gown, and several other players were released from Starlink's guild hall. From the time they emerged from the building until they walked out of the residence's entrance, none of Starlink's or the various superpowers members stopped them. He's releasing them without a fight? Unyielding Heart was stunned when he saw Mu Lingsha and the others free. Honestly, Unyielding Heart didn't believe any of the words Lu Xinglua said before. To his disbelief, Lu Xinglua had actually gone through with his promise and released the captured players without a fight. However, as soon as the bindings on Alluring Summer and the others were removed, Alluring Summer shouted, "Run! Commander, you guys need to get away fast. It's a trap." Unfortunately, as soon as Alluring Summer finished speaking, a threefold magic array suddenly appeared in the sky above Starlink's residence. The magic array instantly expanded and covered a 1,000-yard radius. Apart from Starlink's and the various superpowers members, everyone caught within the barrier felt their bodies growing heavier. Even Tier 4 players like Unyielding Heart found their basic attributes falling by 30%. You think you can run away today? Lu Xinglua sneered as he looked at the members of Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor. "I've released your people, so don't say I didn't abide by our agreement. However, whether you can leave this place alive is another matter altogether. Oh, by the way, this magic barrier is a master barrier. Let alone you Tier 4s, even a superior mythic monster can't break out from it." At the same time as Lu Xinglua finished speaking, 3 NPCs flew out of Starlink's residence and looked down at the 3 guild's members from the air. With the appearance of these 3 NPCs, Violet Cloud's starry domain was instantly overwhelmed by a much stronger and violent mana domain. As a result, her starry domain contracted to only 50 yards away from herself. Meanwhile, upon seeing these 3 NPCs, everyone present gasped involuntarily. Victor Palom, Secret Hand Association Elder. Tier 4 Great Wizard, level 160 HP 180 million, Claire Savrin, Secret Hand Legion Vice Commander. Tier 4 Sky Knight, level 160 HP 330 million, Melt Cabrera, Secret Hand Legion Commander. Tier 4 Elemental Hunter, level 162 HP 270 million. 3 Tier 4 NPCs. How is this possible? The various major powers members gaped in shock at these 3 NPCs. Although they knew that Starlink had worked together with the Secret Hand Association to capture the 3 guilds' executives, they had thought that only 1 Tier 4 NPC was aiding Starlink. Now, 3 Tier 4 NPCs had appeared. Their combined combat power was enough to destroy even Sky Spring City. Melt Cabrera, an elderly man apparently in his 50s who carried a crystalline bow, turned to Lu Xinglua and said, "Guild Leader Xinglua, you've done well this time. Our association will help you take control of the Secret Covenant Tower as agreed." "Thank you, Commander Melt." Lu Xinglua beamed at Melt Cabrera's words. Lu Xinglua's goal since the very beginning had been the 3 guilds' Tier 4 members. The main reason he had Miracle Dragon partake in a duel was to create a distraction while the Secret Hand Associations set up the magic barrier. After all, setting up such a powerful barrier would create powerful mana fluctuations. Only a duel between 2 Tier 4 players could conceal these mana fluctuations. Hence, Lu Xinglua never really cared whether Miracle Dragon won or lost the duel. How vicious of Lu Xinglua! He was planning to wipe out the 3 guilds' top combatants all along. It seems Zero Wing's side is finished. A force of 3 Tier 4 NPCs is basically unstoppable in the Twin Towers Kingdom. At this time, everyone already understood that this was a trap Starlink set up for the 3 guilds. So long as the 3 guilds' top combatants got annihilated here, the 3 guilds would be finished. They would no longer have the ability to resist Starlink and the various superpowers. The complexions of the 3 guilds members darkened when they saw this situation. How is this possible? How did Lu Xinglua recruit the help of so many Tier 4 NPCs? Unyielding Heart couldn't help despairing as he looked at the 3 Tier 4 NPCs in the air. According to the information they obtained, only 1 Tier 4 NPC had been present when Mu Lingsha and the others were captured. They had originally planned for him and Illusory Words to work together to pin down this Tier 4 NPC, while Violet Cloud and Fire Dance went up against Starlink's Tier 4 players. Now, the number of Tier 4 NPCs they had to face had tripled. Moreover, they were even caught inside a master barrier. They couldn't escape even if they wanted to. While the 3 guilds members were at a loss as to what to do, Cabra glanced at them. Capture Zero Wings members. Kill everyone else using soul attacks. I want to let Black Flame know the consequences of provoking the Secret Hand Association. Cabra commanded the two people beside him. In response, Elder Victor Palom chuckled and said, "Rest assured, Commander Melt, none of Zero Wings members will escape today." Cabra's words stunned the spectating crowd. These NPCs are here for Zero Wing? Crap. What did Zero Wing do to have an NPC force aim for their lives? At this time, let alone the various major powers, even Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words were stunned. An NPC force had actually mobilized such a powerful party just to take revenge on Shurfeng? However, before Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words could react to this piece of information, the three NPCs made their move, splitting up and charging at Violet Cloud and Fire Dance. Zero Wing. This is the consequence of your sins. Lu Xingluo burst into maniacal laughter when he saw the three NPCs taking action. I didn't even do anything this time. Previously, Lu Xingluo had still felt quite troubled by the three guilds' resistance. However, Shurfeng had offended the Secret Hand Association on Dragonheart Island, which, in turn, prompted the association to seek a partnership with Lu Xingluo. He had nearly gone crazy from joy back then. Now that three of the association's Tier 4 NPCs were taking action, there was no way Zero Wings members could escape. Now, all he had to do was wait for Zero Wings' destruction and take over Zero Wings' possessions. However, just as the three NPCs were about to reach Fire Dance and her companions, who were prepared to fight to the death, a sword light suddenly appeared out of nowhere on the battlefield. This lightning-fast sword light cut straight at Cabra, who led the charge against Zero Wings members. However, Cabra was no ordinary Tier 4 NPC. Quickly responding to the attack, he used his crystalline bow as a melee weapon and struck the approaching sword light. Boom! An explosion occurred, and space within a radius of several dozen yards shattered. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The Elemental Hunter went flying over 100 yards away, a damage exceeding 1 million appearing above his head. Secret Hand Association, how bold of you! I didn't bother picking a fight with you in Dragonheart City, yet you actually have the gall to come and pick a fight in my territory? It seems you people are tired of living just like Sabrid. Before anyone could react to the sudden attack, a cold voice echoed throughout the battlefield. Everyone turned to the voice's origin, curious to find out who had sent Cabra flying. The next moment, what entered everyone's eyes was a cloaked man walking out of the crowd. The man wielded a golden sword decorated with crimson runes, and his frightening aura made them feel as if the god of death had descended onto the battlefield. Black Flame. Chapter 28:16. Nobody is leaving. Everyone couldn't help doubting their eyes when they saw the cloaked man. After all, Cabra was a level 162, Tier 4 NPC. Although he was only a Tier 4 ranger, which wasn't a strength-oriented class, he still possessed a massive advantage in terms of levels. He simply wasn't an existence current players could go up against. Nevertheless, Shurfeng had sent the Elemental Hunter flying with one hit. How frightening was his strength? He's actually that Black Flame? Standing in the spectating crowd, the robust man from the Silver Lion Adventurer team was astonished when he discovered Shurfeng's identity. His team members were similarly stunned. They never imagined that the stranger their commander decided to befriend would actually be a big shot. Moreover, it was even a big shot capable of shaking the entire god's domain. Guild leader? Fire Dance and the others were also surprised when they saw Shurfeng approaching them. They hadn't thought that Shurfeng had already returned. Brother Black Flame, you've really made us wait. Unyielding Heart revealed a bitter smile when he saw Shurfeng. Although not much time had passed since they parted ways at the Ruin Mountain Range, it felt like months and years had gone by on their side as the pressure they faced from the various superpowers increased by the day. Fortunately, their peak experts had found several Tier 4 legacy lands while exploring level 130 maps. As a result, their three guilds managed to produce 3 Tier 4 players quickly, instantly alleviating the pressure they faced at the Twin Towers Kingdom by a large margin. They were also continuously obtaining complete Tier 3 legacies from the Secret Covenant Tower, which allowed their guilds to produce Tier 3 players rapidly. As a result, their 3 guilds had managed to last until today, albeit by the skin of their teeth. Shifeng's return had undoubtedly increased their staying power. When Illusory Words saw Shifeng, she, too, heaved a deep sigh of relief. They had been fighting long and hard just to endure until this moment. Meanwhile, Shifeng's appearance also caused a stir among the members of Starlink's faction. None of them had expected Shifeng to reappear in such a sudden and powerful manner. Black Flame, you're finally willing to show yourself. Lu Xingluo laughed as he looked at Shifeng. I've been waiting for a long time. Today, I'll let you see Zero Wing perish before your eyes. Everyone. In truth, Lu Xingluo was slightly surprised by Shifeng's arrival. He never thought that Shifeng would be able to return from the sealed Dragonheart city so quickly. Lu Xingluo had originally planned to use the annihilation of Fire Dance and the others to force Shifeng to come forward. Now, he no longer had to trouble himself. As soon as Lu Xingluo finished speaking, Sword Demon, Wind Demon, and Tengu, who had all reached Tier 4, moved to surround Zero Wing's members. Only, shortly after the trio exited the residence's entrance, 2 figures intercepted them. You'll need to beat the 2 of us first before you proceed. Lifeless Thorn said as he grabbed the spear slung on his back and swept it at the 3 enemies before him. At this time, Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9 stopped concealing their life auras. 2 more Tier 4 auras spread across the battlefield, stunning Sword Demon's group. 2 more Tier 4s? How many Tier 4s does Zero Wing have? The various major powers exclaimed in surprise when they sensed Lifeless Thorn's and Solitary 9's auras. At this stage of the game, Tier 4 players were still as rare as a phoenix's feather. A superpower would be fortunate to have even 1 Tier 4 player. Yet, based on what they could see now, Zero Wing actually had 5 Tier 4 players already. Even the 5 great super guilds didn't have such a force yet. You people from Zero Wing are indeed capable. After glancing at Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9, Lu Xingluo turned to Shifeng and sneered, "Unfortunately, all of you are inside a master barrier right now. Even if you have more Tier 4s on your side, you still don't have a chance at victory." Upon hearing this, the various onlookers snapped out of their daze and very much agreed with Lu Xingluo's words. "March, you go as well." 1,000 Miles commanded as he looked at Silent March. "Make sure Black Flame doesn't leave this place alive. We'll be in trouble afterward, otherwise." "Yes, sir." Nodding, Silent March took out her staff and joined Sword Demon's trio. Seeing that Silent March, a Tier 4 necromancer, was taking action as well, the spectating players sighed subconsciously. Although Starlink's side was still outnumbered, it had the help of a master barrier and 3 Tier 4 NPCs. Zero Wing's side stood no chance at all. However, before Silent March could arrive before Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9, Shifeng suddenly slashed at the sky. World Breaker. The next moment, a dazzling brilliance shot into the sky and instantly penetrated the magic barrier. Subsequently, the barrier shattered, and the overwhelming pressure Zero Wing's members felt disappeared. "What master barrier?" Looking at Lu Xingluo, Shifeng asked calmly, "Do you mean this broken thing?" At Shifeng's words, silence enveloped the entire battlefield. Lu Xingluo, in particular, was utterly thunderstruck as he looked at the dissipating barrier. Impossible! Even a superior mythic monster would have a difficult time breaking this barrier. How could he just? At this time, Lu Xingluo felt as if he was having a nightmare. Either that or the heavens were playing a trick on him. "Guild leader, are you still just a Tier 4 player?" At this time, let alone Lu Xingluo and the various superpowers members, even Fire Dance and the others gaped in shock at this scene. This was a barrier capable of trapping superior mythic monsters. Yet, Shifeng had destroyed it with 1 slash. Not good. They can run away now that the barrier is broken. Reacting to the situation quickly, 1,000 Miles looked at Lu Xingluo and urged, "Guild leader Xingluo, we need to figure out a plan fast. If a Tier 4 player wanted to escape, even Tier 4 NPCs would have trouble stopping them. Meanwhile, if their faction failed to capture Zero Wings members alive, they would have a much harder time dealing with the 3 guilds afterward. On the other hand, Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words breathed out a sigh of relief at this situation. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU with the magic barrier gone, so long as they scattered and fled, the 3 Tier 4 NPCs wouldn't be able to capture them. Moreover, they were still inside Sky Spring City. If the 3 Tier 4 NPCs caused a commotion, Sky Spring City's Tier 4 magistrate would definitely intervene. At that time, the magistrate would be able to pin down at least one of Secret Hand's NPCs. However, before Lu Xinglua and Thousand Miles could issue commands, Shifeng jumped into the air above Starlink's residence and scanned the crowd beneath him. This situation confused the various spectating players. They couldn't understand why Shifeng had approached Starlink's residence instead of running away. Run away! Looking at Thousand Miles, Shifeng laughed and said, "Do you think you're the only ones capable of summoning Tier 4 NPCs? Nobody is leaving today. All of you will stay here." After saying so, Shifeng took out 2 Summon Guard scrolls from his bag and activated them. Chapter 28:17, Reversal. As Shifeng chanted the incantation to activate the Summon Guard scrolls, 2 magic arrays appeared before him. 1 second later, 2 figures emerged from these magic arrays. Along with the appearance of these 2 figures, everyone present felt an unprecedented pressure weighing down their body. Tier 4 personal guards? How did he do it? The various Major Powers members gasped when they saw the 2 new figures in the air. Many players owned personal guards in God's domain, but those capable of owning Tier 4 personal guards at this stage of the game could be counted on one's fingers. This was because NPCs had much more difficulty getting promoted to Tier 4 than players. Even Feingold guards had no more than a 25% chance of success. And in the event of failure, these personal guards would have to wait 1 whole month before they could challenge their promotion quest again. Moreover, the success rate wouldn't change in the slightest. Yet now, Shifeng had actually summoned 2 Tier 4 personal guards. Meanwhile, these 2 personal guards were none other than Kite and Anna. As the 2 NPCs had been busy challenging their Tier 4 promotion quests previously, Shifeng had not summoned them for quite some time now. Fortunately, Kite and Anna possessed incredibly high growth potentials. Both of them had successfully gotten promoted to Tier 4, and their current levels even surpassed Shifeng's by a large margin. At this time, Kite had already reached level 146, whereas Anna was at level 149. While their levels were still lower than the Secret Hand Association's 3 NPCs, the difference was negligible. After reaching Tier 4, the main factors that allowed Tier 4 NPCs to undergo qualitative improvements were fragmented legendary weapons and equipment, control over mana, and the number of Tier 4 skills and spells learned. With Kite and Anna's arrival, even a fool could tell that the tables had turned. Previously, after Starlink and the various superpowers lost the support of their master barrier, their disadvantage in numbers meant they could only rely on the Secret Hand Association's NPCs to overwhelm Zero Wing's side. However, Kite and Anna could fend off at least 2 of the association's Tier 4 NPCs. And with the growing commotion, Sky Spring City's Tier 4 magistrate would most likely come to help soon. Hence, Starlink and the various superpowers no longer had any advantages at this time. In fact, they were even at a disadvantage since Zero Wing's side had 3 more Tier 4 players than they did. A difference of 3 Tier 4 players might not seem like much, but it was already more than enough to elicit despair in Starlink and the various superpowers. This was because even 10,000 Tier 3 players wouldn't be enough to go against 3 Tier 4 players. That would only result in a one-sided massacre. Moreover, with the seal over Sky Spring City still in effect, the only way players could teleport out of the city was through the teleportation hall. This situation was considerably disadvantageous for Starlink's side. When Lu Xinglua recognized the situation, his complexion turned indescribably ugly. He had never dreamed that Shifeng would be able to reverse the situation and even put him in dire straits. Guild leader Xinglua, what should we do now? If it comes down to a fight, I'm afraid our side. Thousand Miles asked anxiously as he looked at Lu Xinglua. Lu Xinglua had full responsibility for this operation. Miracle and the various superpowers were simply here to show support. After all, Lu Xinglua had repeatedly guaranteed that he would take down Zero Wing this time. Then, the various superpowers would divide the Secret Covenant Tower and the three guilds' territories among themselves. Now, before Miracle even took a cut out of Zero Wing, it had already lost Miracle Dragon. Moreover, at this rate, even Silent March and Thousand Miles himself would most likely perish. I understand. Sighing helplessly, Lu Xinglua said, I originally thought that these means would already be enough to take down Zero Wing. It seems I still have to request their help in the end. Request their help? At Lu Xinglua's words, realization dawned upon Thousand Miles. He then looked at a nearby team of several dozen players and muttered, could it be? Thousand Miles had heard of the mysterious guild known as 100 Ghosts. This was a guild that showed no respect or fear for even the 5 great super guilds. He never thought that Lu Xinglua would actually have such a deep connection with 100 Ghosts. That's right. It's them. Lu Xinglua nodded. He then looked at the handsome youth leading 100 Ghosts' team and called out, Brother Abyss, I'm afraid I'll have to bother you for help. Once we get out of this predicament, Starlink will agree to all your conditions. Good. I've been waiting a long time for these words, Guild Leader Xinglua. Awakened Abyss smiled when he heard Lu Xinglua's promise. Since you've thought it through already, 100 Ghosts naturally won't sit back and do nothing. Thank you, Brother Abyss. Lu Xinglua breathed out a sigh of relief. Shifeng had really boxed Lu Xinglua into a corner this time. Since they were inside Sky Spring City, which also happened to be Zero Wing's territory, Starlink's members would all end up jailed if they died or got captured inside the city. Meanwhile, the prison sentence could last anywhere from a few days to over a dozen days. This absolutely wasn't an outcome Lu Xinglua could tolerate. Now that 100 Ghosts had agreed to intervene, though, Starlink would escape this predicament. Lu Xinglua knew very clearly what kind of power was backing 100 Ghosts. It simply wasn't something the main continent's superpowers could go up against. The various major powers present overheard the conversation between Lu Xinglua and Awakened Abyss. However, they couldn't understand why Lu Xinglua, Starlink's guild leader, would ask Awakened Abyss for help. Moreover, Lu Xinglua relaxed visibly when he heard the handsome youth's positive response. Who are those people? Lu Xinglua is actually begging them for help? How ignorant are you guys? That's 100 Ghosts. I never imagined that Starlink would manage to partner up with 100 Ghosts. Starlink really hit the jackpot this time. I heard that even the 5 great super guilds have to show respect to 100 Ghosts. Although the 5 great super guilds initially sent a lot of famous experts to pick a fight with 100 Ghosts, none of those experts returned alive. Many of the major powers present were ignorant of 100 Ghosts' existence. After hearing the explanation of some well-informed people, they quickly understood how extraordinary an existence 100 Ghosts was. On the other hand, Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words couldn't help making ugly expressions. Damn it! Why would 100 Ghosts partner with Starlink? Frustration filled Unyielding Heart's eyes when he heard Awakened Abyss agreeing to Lu Xinglua's request. After 100 Ghosts made its debut on the main continent, his guild leader had received an astonishing secret message. Afterward, his guild leader warned everyone in the guild not to provoke 100 Ghosts' members. Otherwise, there would be unimaginable consequences. Initially, Unyielding Heart thought that 100 Ghosts had merely accepted Starlink's invitation so that they could challenge some of the experts here. It never occurred to him that 100 Ghosts actually planned to partner with Starlink. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Illusory Words was similarly filled with frustration. After seeing Shifeng summon his personal guards, she thought they would be able to deal a heavy blow to Starlink and the various superpowers. However, now that 100 Ghosts, an existence that even the 5 great super guilds feared, had agreed to step in for Starlink, if their 3 guilds insisted on taking action against Starlink, they would make an enemy of 100 Ghosts. The next moment, after Awakened Abyss agreed to Lu Xinglua's request, he looked up at Shifeng and said, Guild Leader Black Flame, 100 Ghosts has some dealings with Starlink. Can you spare Starlink out of respect for 100 Ghosts? If Zero Wing needs help in the future, I, Awakened Abyss, will definitely lend a helping hand. As soon as Awakened Abyss finished speaking, everyone present turned to Shurfeng, who was still hovering in midair. They all wondered how he would answer. Although sparing Starlink here would mean losing an opportunity to deal a heavy blow to Starlink, Zero Wing would gain 100 Ghosts' favor. This wouldn't necessarily be a losing transaction. After all, 100 Ghosts was a mysterious guild that even the 5 great super guilds had to show respect to. Gaining the favor of such an existence could bring many benefits. Respect? Favor? Shurfeng laughed as he looked at Awakened Abyss. When Starlink was pushing our 3 guilds into a dead end earlier, why didn't I see you standing up for us at that time? Yet, now that Starlink is in a desperate situation, you're telling us to let them go? Do you think my respect is so cheap? What will you do if I don't give it to you? Chapter 28:18. You think too highly of yourself. When Shurfeng finished speaking, silence enveloped the entire battlefield. Nobody had expected that Shurfeng would show no regard at all for 100 Ghosts. A cold glint flashed in Awakened Abyss's eyes at Shurfeng's response. Guild Leader Black Flame, my suggestion is beneficial for both our sides. If 100 Ghosts interferes, setting all else aside, just in terms of number of Tier 45, Zero Wing won't have much of an advantage, Awakened Abyss said coldly. If you insist on remaining obstinate, I'll have to take it as Zero Wing having hostile intentions toward 100 Ghosts. After saying so, Awakened Abyss stopped concealing his life aura. Immediately, a life aura rivaling that of the Secret Hand Association's Tier 4 NPCs spread across the battlefield. Simultaneously, Awakened Abyss revealed the glow effect of his equipment, the result making the surrounding spectators gasp. This was because Awakened Abyss was actually fully geared in epic equipment. Moreover, apart from a full set of epic equipment, Awakened Abyss's longsword was also extraordinary, sporting 6 gleaming gemstones inlaid into it. And although the longsword looked old-fashioned, the aura it exuded was much stronger than that of the epic equipment he wore by a large margin. Meanwhile, the short-haired woman standing beside Awakened Abyss also stopped concealing her life aura and equipment. And like Awakened Abyss, she was fully geared in epic equipment and carried a battle axe that rivaled Awakened Abyss's longsword. Aren't those two a little too well-equipped? No wonder even the 5 great super guilds are wary of 100 Ghosts. Even Starlink and the various superpowers can't afford to arm their members to the teeth with such excellent items. When the various major powers saw the dazzling glow enveloping Awakened Abyss and the short-haired beauty, they were startled. Everyone present had seen epic weapons and equipment before. However, trying to fully gear a player with epic items that suited them was incredibly difficult. Yet, 100 Ghosts had managed to do so for 2 players. One could see just how powerful 100 Ghosts was through this point alone. Hence, it was clearly unwise for Zero Wing to make an enemy of 100 Ghosts at this time. Hostile intentions? Shurfeng laughed as he looked at Awakened Abyss. You think too highly of yourself. Since you wish to stand on Starlink's side, then die with them. After saying so, Shurfeng unsheathed the light of 2 worlds and executed a downward slash at Awakened Abyss. First sword, Light Shadow. An illusory greatsword over 100 meters long appeared in the sky and descended toward Awakened Abyss and the short-haired woman. Space ruptured in the greatsword's wake, and Awakened Abyss and the woman suddenly found themselves having difficulty moving. How dare he? When Lu Xinglua and the various superpowers executives saw this scene, they gaped in shock. They never thought that Shurfeng would even attack 100 Ghosts' envoys. Crazy bastard! Awakened Abyss revealed a startled expression when he saw the illusory greatsword. He hadn't expected Shurfeng to take such prompt action. Moreover, he found the power of Shurfeng's attack stifling. Even the Tier 4 NPCs he had faced before couldn't execute such a powerful attack. Almost by instinct, Awakened Abyss took out a crystal and shattered it without hesitation. 2 barriers instantly appeared before Awakened Abyss and the short-haired woman, protecting them. Boom! When the illusory greatsword came into contact with the first barrier, the barrier immediately cracked. Only after the first barrier had shattered completely did the illusory greatsword disappear. Awakened Abyss and the short-haired woman stared at this outcome in disbelief. This dual-layered barrier was the product of a Tier 4 curse, a tool they carried for emergencies. Even Tier 4 NPCs couldn't break the generated barriers, yet Shifeng had shattered one layer. In other words, Shifeng needed only one more attack to destroy this Tier 4 defensive curse. "We're leaving." Awakened Abyss commanded his team to retreat without hesitation. "His mana technique is too powerful. Only the elders can deal with him. We won't be able to stop his third attack." As soon as Awakened Abyss finished speaking, 100 Ghosts' members promptly scattered and fled. Awakened Abyss and the short-haired woman leaped into the air and made a beeline for Sky Spring City's gate. They dared not try to put up a fight. "It seems you're not completely inept," Shifeng commented indifferently as he looked at the remaining barrier before him. He then looked at Awakened Abysses and the short-haired woman's fleeing figures and continued, "However, since you dare interfere in Zero Wings matters, I'll have one of you stay behind today to teach you a lesson." After saying so, Shifeng suddenly disappeared from where he hovered. When he reappeared, he was in front of Awakened Abyss. "You." Shifeng's appearance shocked Awakened Abyss. Shifeng was too fast. His movement speed in the air practically rivaled a flying mount's. However, before Awakened Abyss could react to the situation, Shifeng swung the light of two worlds once more. It was evident he had chosen Awakened Abyss as his target of detention. Spatial slash. Black flame. Unwilling to take any chances, Awakened Abyss activated his Berserk skill, boosting his basic attributes by a large margin. Now, he could go toe-to-toe against a superior mythic monster of the same level. "Don't go too far." Awakened Abyss used his full strength to counter Shifeng's attack, his long sword radiating a colorful brilliance as it swung to meet Shifeng's light of two worlds. Now, the power of his attack was not the slightest bit weaker than that of the light shadow Shifeng executed before. Boom! Two sky-splitting spatial tears appeared when the two swords collided. Immediately afterward, Awakened Abyss crashed into the ground below like a cannonball, and his HP plummeted. In the blink of an eye, Awakened Abyss's HP, which exceeded 20 million, fell to 0, and the youth became deader than dead. "Abyss!" The short-haired woman was stunned when she saw Awakened Abyss killed. Awakened Abyss was one of the top 3 experts among 100 Ghosts' younger generation, yet he actually couldn't withstand even one attack from Shifeng. When Lu Xinglua and the others standing inside Starlink's residence saw this scene, they too were flabbergasted. They never thought Shifeng would actually kill Awakened Abyss without hesitation, showing no fear of 100 Ghosts whatsoever. "Run away!" Nobody knew who said these words. However, as soon as they appeared, the tens of thousands of players inside Starlink's residence came to a tacit agreement and began fleeing immediately. Even the Secret Hand Association's NPCs had grim expressions when they saw Shifeng's might. "We're leaving," Melt Cabra commanded, understanding that the situation was no longer in their favor. With just the 3 of them here, they would be helpless against Shifeng. Immediately afterward, the Secret Hand Association's 3 Tier 4 NPCs turned to flee Sky Spring City. "You want to escape? Dream on." Looking at Kite and Anna, Shifeng commanded, "Kill all of these people." "Yes, sir." Kite and Anna, who had remained on standby until now, responded respectfully. They then split up and took independent action. The next moment, Anna set out in pursuit of Melt Cabra's group. As for Kite, he joined Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9 in dealing with Starlink's Tier 4 players. "You think you can stop us by yourself? You must be tired of living." Melt Cabra was incensed when he saw Anna coming to block his group by herself. Although Anna was also a Tier 4 existence, she was merely level 149. She would have trouble stopping even one of them, let alone all 3. She was basically insulting their strength by coming at them alone. However, before Melt Cabra could say anything more, Anna unleashed her mana domain. Immediately, Anna's mana domain enveloped the entire Sky Spring City, transforming the city into a world of black and white. Under the effects of her mana domain, Starlink's and the various superpowers Tier 3 players couldn't even budge. As for Meltcabra's group of 3, they felt immense pressure pressing down on them, subjecting the mana within their bodies to a powerful suppression. The 3 of them could barely extend their own mana domains 20 yards from themselves. The might of Anna's mana domain was simply unbelievable. Before Meltcabra and the other 2 could react, countless pitch-black chains assaulted them from all directions. Simultaneously, innumerable holy swords appeared in the sky and shot at all 3 of them. Despite the trio working together and doing their best to fend off the attacks, they actually remained at a complete disadvantage. Anna thoroughly displayed her strength as an epic guard, and it was only a matter of time before she defeated the 3 hostile NPCs. Lu Xinglua, you should follow your friends as well. Shi Feng instantly appeared in front of Lu Xinglua and swung the light of 2 worlds at him. He gave Lu Xinglua no room to even catch a breather. Damn it! Damn it! Black Flame, I'll make you pay for this. 100 ghosts will make you pay for this too. Lu Xinglua gritted his teeth and shattered one of the crystal rings he wore. The next moment, a strange, gray space formed around Lu Xinglua and thoroughly negated Shi Feng's attack. However, Lu Xinglua also let out an agonized scream in the gray space. It was evident that getting caught within this gray space wasn't entirely pleasant for Lu Xinglua. A second later, the gray space disappeared together with Lu Xinglua. He sure knows how to run quickly. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Shi Feng wasn't particularly surprised when Lu Xinglua escaped. After all, Lu Xinglua was Starlink's guild leader. It would be strange if he didn't have a few powerful life-saving items. Fortunately, Shi Feng had already achieved his goal in coming here. After today's event, Starlink and the various superpowers would lose tens of thousands of Tier 3 experts and many Tier 4 experts. Moreover, even if these experts died, they would still be detained for several days in Sky Spring City's prison once they respawned. Less than 10 minutes later, with Anna and Kite's assistance, Zero Wings members annihilated the Secret Hand Association's 3 Tier 4 NPCs and the various superpowers Tier 3 and Tier 4 experts. The spectating powers were awestruck to witness the deaths of the various superpowers experts. None of them had ever dreamed that the superpowers' crusade against the Secret Covenant Tower would come to such an end. Zero Wings' hidden strength also exceeded their imagination. The guild simply wasn't in existence the various superpowers could go up against. This astonishing piece of news quickly spread all over the Twin Towers Kingdom. It even reached the neighboring kingdoms and empires, shocking the various player forces there. Chapter 28:19 Changes in the Twin Towers Kingdom in a certain border town of the Fire Dragon Empire. At this time, a 3,000-man team of Tier 3 players was resting in 2 bars on the main street. All the town residents, be they players or NPCs, were extremely afraid of this team. This was because the average level of this team was level 125, 3 levels higher than the average level of Tier 3 players in the Fire Dragon Empire. Meanwhile, leading this powerful team of Tier 3 players was a long-haired woman with a heroic air. When the players looked at this white-clad woman, their gaze held awe and respect. This woman was none other than the first player in Mythology to have gotten promoted to Tier 4, Cold Shadow, who was now Mythology's first Vice Guild leader. In addition, she had even reached level 133, 11 levels higher than the average Tier 3 player. The cold and sharp aura she exuded was so powerful that even Tier 3 players over 100 yards away shuddered involuntarily. Vice Guild leader, news just came in from the Twin Towers Kingdom. White Feather, who was now a level 130, Tier 4 Guardian Knight, reported to Cold Shadow. Starlink suffered a tragic defeat. Moreover, because of Black Flame's sudden appearance, with the exception of Lu Xinglua, none of the various superpowers experts escaped. Nearly 20,000 Tier 3 experts were penalized with 10 days confinement in Sky Spring City's prison. He's finally willing to show himself. Cold Shadow, who was resting quietly with her eyes shut, wasn't the slightest bit surprised when she heard White Feather's report. Unfortunately, although Black Flame dealt a heavy blow to Starlink and the various superpowers, he still let the key person escape. Zero Wing will most likely face a lot of trouble after this. After all, the person standing behind Lu Xingluo isn't some random pushover. That person is also adamant in acquiring the Secret Covenant Tower. According to our insider reports, Black Flame killed 100 Ghosts' awakened abyss, White Feather said in a quieter tone. In fact, out of 100 Ghosts' team of several dozen players, only Vice Commander Jade Leaf managed to escape. This bit of news had Cold Shadow opening her eyes in shock. Has Black Flame lost his mind? He actually killed Awakened Abyss? Does he not know Awakened Abyss's identity? Awakened Abyss was a talent 100 Ghosts placed great importance on. The youth was so important that 100 Ghosts had even tasked Jade Leaf, a Tier 4 expert, to accompany him as his bodyguard. Meanwhile, 100 Ghosts was an existence that even the 5 great super guilds dared not offend. The power this mysterious guild wielded simply defied common sense. At this point, the only thing the 5 great super guilds could do was form partnerships with 100 Ghosts. They absolutely couldn't afford to make an enemy of the guild. This was something Odin repeatedly emphasized. Hence, everyone in mythology was currently doing their best to avoid 100 Ghosts' people. Yet, Shi Feng had done the exact opposite. Not only did he choose to oppose 100 Ghosts, but he had even killed Awakened Abyss. When 100 Ghosts learned of this, the guild would definitely go into a frenzy. In that case, should we take action now? White Feather asked. Zero Wing was a guild that mythology had to destroy, no matter what. Now that Shi Feng had dealt a heavy blow to Starlink and the various superpowers, these guilds definitely wouldn't just let the matter lie. In fact, they might even put everything on the line to fight Zero Wing. After all, these superpowers had lost so many Tier 3 experts already. If they still couldn't secure the Secret Covenant Tower, recovering from this loss within a short period would be impossible. Not to mention, 100 Ghosts would most likely retaliate against Zero Wing as well. At that time, a spectacular battle would definitely occur at the Secret Covenant Tower, which would be the perfect opportunity for mythology to take action. No, it still isn't time. Cold Shadow shook her head. We have just recently completed that inferior legendary quest and obtained a mana body legacy. We need to digest this legacy first. It wouldn't be too late to take action once we have improved our mana bodies. After all, when it comes to matters regarding the mana body, Black Flame's side has already made significant progress. I doubt we are a match for him in this regard even now. I understand. I'll notify the others about this and have them head to the Divine Cave, White Feather said, nodding. There's no need for us to head to the Divine Cave yet. We are merely learning a legacy. We can learn it anywhere, Cold Shadow said. After reading a message one of her subordinates just sent her, she smiled faintly and continued. Moreover, if we head to the Secret Covenant Tower now, we might get an opportunity to understand 100 Ghosts' strength. 100 Ghosts is taking action already? White Feather was surprised when she heard Cold Shadow's words. The strength Zero Wing had displayed thus far was incredibly terrifying. The guild had not only 5 Tier 4 players but also 2 Tier 4 personal guards, who were far superior to the average Tier 4 NPC. At this stage of the game, even the 5 great super guilds could only resort to a war of attrition with Zero Wing. In a frontal confrontation, their chances of defeating Zero Wing would be 0. Hence, White Feather found it incredible that 100 Ghosts would retaliate against Zero Wing right after losing several dozen of its top combatants. That's not entirely true, Cold Shadow said, chuckling. A hint of anticipation appearing in her eyes, she added, You'll understand once we get there. If Zero Wing doesn't abandon the Secret Covenant Tower this time, it'll most likely be doomed forever. After Cold Shadow finished speaking, White Feather promptly organized a group of peak experts, and they accompanied Cold Shadow to the Secret Covenant Tower. Twin Towers Kingdom, Sky Spring City. Guild Leader, we're done compiling the list of items we got, Fire Dance reported as she approached Shi Feng. With an excited look on her face, she continued, we obtained close to 20,000 weapons and equipment from this battle, including over 6,000 level 110 plus fine gold weapons and equipment and over 2,000 level 110 plus dark gold weapons and equipment. The The rest are all level 110 plus secret silver weapons and equipment. This harvest will mitigate a significant portion of the losses we suffered previously. Currently, Fire Dance, Yulan, and Melancholic Smile were managing the affairs of the entire guild. Dealing with the guild's weapon stockpile gave Fire Dance massive headaches. Previously, when she had merely been commanding Zero Wing's main force, she hadn't known just how important it was for the guild to have a sufficient stockpile of weapons and equipment. However, after taking over Gentle Snow's and Aqua Rose's responsibilities and repeatedly clashing with the various superpowers, she finally understood what a guild's foundation referred to. Originally, she believed that a guild's foundation referred to the number of experts a guild possessed. However, after the various superpowers began waging war against Zero Wing, she realized that what truly served as a guild's foundation were weapons and equipment. If not for the Candlelight trading firm having a sufficiently large number of lifestyle players, Zero Wing would have long since run out of weapons and equipment. And if that happened, members would definitely withdraw from the guild in droves. After all, nobody would want to fight for a guild that couldn't even arm them with weapons and equipment. Give half of the weapons and equipment to Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul, Shi Feng said, smiling. I believe they haven't been faring well recently either. These weapons and equipment should help them cope with their troubles. Shi Feng had a very thorough understanding of the issues involved in guild wars. When he led Shadow in his previous life, there had been instances when the guild's warehouse had only bronze weapons and equipment. Back then, Shadow had only been a small guild. If a superpower were to face a situation where its warehouse had only bronze weapons and equipment, everyone in the guild would have long since quit. After all, even if guild players died and lost levels, so long as they had sufficiently good weapons and equipment, they could quickly recover their levels. However, without weapons and equipment, they might as well be independent players. At the very least, hostile forces wouldn't persecute them. Before Shi Feng could issue any more commands, Illusory Words approached him with a grim look on her face. Guild leader Black Flame, a big problem appeared in Barren Forest City, near the secret Covenant Tower. Illusory Words said anxiously. According to our scouts, over 1 million faux saint monsters have appeared there and are making their way toward the secret Covenant Tower. The majority of them are level 135 Great Lords, and there are also roughly 1,000 level 140 plus mythic-ranked faux saint monsters. 8,000 mythic monsters? Fire Dance was stunned when she heard what Illusory Words said. For a moment, she even wondered if her ears were working properly. Normally, it would be incredibly difficult to come across even one mythic monster. Not to mention, monsters had gained the ability to think for themselves after the major system update. This had increased their combat standards by a large margin and improved their capacity for cooperation. Under normal circumstances, a Tier 4 expert would have to flee if they came across 2 or 3 mythic monsters of the same level simultaneously. And with around 10 mythic monsters, one could even attack towns and cities. Nonetheless, she was being told that their opponent had 1,000 mythic monsters? 1,000? Shi Feng was also surprised by this piece of news. The strongest monster tide he had come across out in the fields had only around 100 mythic monsters. That monster tide had successfully destroyed a guild city defended by several Tier 4 players. Now, the enemy had 1,000 mythic monsters faux saint monsters possessing above-average combat standards. This was undoubtedly a devastating force. That's right. There are at least 1,000 of them. Illusory Words nodded, an ugly expression appearing on her face. According to their movement speed, it'll take them around 10 hours to reach the secret Covenant Tower. We should have enough time if we withdraw from the tower now. They didn't have any hope of defeating a force of 1,000 level 140 plus mythic monsters, even if they had a guild city as support. Without a guild city for protection, their only option was to give up. After all, players killed by those faux saint monsters would suffer heavy penalties. No wonder Lu Xingluo was so confident even while retreating. It turns out he still had such a trump card hidden, Shi Feng said in sudden realization. Chuckling, he continued, it seems they are really desperate this time. It would have been a different story if Saint's Hand had mobilized this legion of mythic-ranked faux saint monsters in a neutral map, but it was currently moving within the Twin Towers Kingdom's borders. The kingdom would definitely mobilize its army once it noticed the faux saint monsters. A kingdom's army wasn't an existence to be trifled with. This was especially true now that the NPC population in the game had skyrocketed. Once the Twin Towers Kingdom mobilized its army, even a force of 1,000 mythic monsters would meet a tragic end. Meanwhile, this legion of mythic-ranked faux saint monsters was probably close to everything Saint's Hand had. The fact that Saint's Hand was willing to go so far probably meant that Lu Xingluo and the various superpowers had paid it an astronomical price. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You anxiously, Fire Dance asked, Guild leader, should we withdraw our members from the tower now? No. Shifeng shook his head. A manic gleam appearing in his eyes, he said, since these people wish to die, we'll fulfill their wish. When Illusory Words and Fire Dance heard Shifeng's words, their first thought was that he had truly gone mad. After all, he was actually still planning to engage the enemy in such a situation. A legion with 1,000 mythic-ranked faux saint monsters was something only NPCs could handle at present. It simply wasn't a force players could go up against. Guild leader Black Flame. At this time, Illusory Words suddenly thought of something, and a hint of shock flashed in her eyes. That thing, have you completed it? Michim. It's completed. Shifeng nodded. However, I still need to make some final adjustments. For now, I'll have to trouble you two to gather our manpower at the tower as soon as possible. I'll meet you there. After saying so, Shifeng summoned the Thunder Eagle and flew straight to the secret Covenant Tower. Chapter 28:20 Sudden Appearance of the Steel Fortress Barren Forest City, Frostrain Ridge. Frostrain Ridge was a level 70 map. Snow blanketed the place all year round, and it was famous for cryolite. In God's domain, cryolite was one of the rare ores that could be used to manufacture alchemy tools. Hence, it had incredibly high demand. However, as its output was relatively low and the appearance of its deposits was random, its price was constantly high. Currently, one piece of cryolite could sell for 20 silver on the market. Hence, many newcomers in God's domain would choose to grind for levels in the Frostrain Ridge. Doing so earned them EXP and a considerable sum of money. However, the vast Frostrain Ridge was devoid of players and NPCs at this time. The entire map had become a land of death due to the invasion of faux saint monsters. Above Frostrain Ridge, a 20-meter-long Darkfire Crow flew through the sky and stopped before a 200-meter-long ancient demonic serpent hovering in the air. The ancient demonic serpent was like the king of the skies, overlooking all existences. Even the extraordinary ranked Darkfire Crow was like an infant before the ancient demonic serpent. In fact, despite being at the Tier 3 peak standard, the Darkfire Crow actually bristled in fear when it arrived before the ancient demonic serpent. If not for its master forcing it, the Darkfire Crow would have tried to stay as far away as possible from the ancient demonic serpent. A total of 300 players rode on the back of the ancient demonic serpent. These players were all at least level 126 and radiated an aura similar to that of Tier 4 mythic monsters. They wore black heavy armor, and their eyes gave off a bloody glow. In addition, leading these players were 5 bona fide Tier 4 players. If Shifeng were here, he would recognize one of these 5 players, the short-haired woman Jade Leaf. At this time, though, she had a respectful and fearful expression on her face as she looked at the elderly man before her. Elder Windshadow, I apologize for the long wait, said Lu Xingluo from the Darkfire Crow. At this time, Lu Xingluo's appearance had undergone significant changes. If one looked past the gray cloak he wore, one would notice scarlet runes ringing his neck. The pupils in his eyes were now dark gold reverse crosses. Smiling, Lu Xingluo said to the elderly man riding at the head of the ancient demonic serpent, I didn't expect Elder Windshadow to bring the Black Knights here. It seems that you really plan on making Zero Wing disappear. At this point, the various superpowers in God's domain knew very little about the guild known as 100 Ghosts. However, Lu Xinglua was quite clear about how powerful the guild was. The Black Knight Legion was 100 Ghosts' trump card legion, and it was much more powerful than even the 5 great super guilds' trump card legions. This was because the members of this legion could no longer be considered human. Not only did every one of them possess a special bloodline, but even the weakest among them was at the flowing water realm standard. Combined, their 5 senses, raw power, and reaction speed allowed them to surpass even the average Tier 4 player. The Black Knight's equipment standard was even more amazing. Every member was geared in Tier 3 mana set equipment. With this set, even an ordinary Tier 3 expert could hold their ground against Tier 4 mythic monsters. Of course, this Tier 3 mana set equipment wasn't something just anybody could use. This was because the set had an incredibly high strength requirement, which was already at the Tier 4 standard. Even a Tier 3 berserker who had invested all their free attribute points into strength couldn't meet this requirement. It was unrelated to the levels of players. Only these monsters the 100 Ghosts nurtured could equip this Tier 3 mana set equipment while still at Tier 3. In addition, mana equipment had a massive flaw. Unlike ordinary equipment, mana equipment couldn't be repaired. Every reduction in durability was permanent. Hence, using this Tier 3 mana set equipment was incredibly costly. Even an existence like 100 Ghosts dared not resort to it. Frequently 100 Ghosts had 1,000 of such monstrous players. Although the guild had dispatched only 300 now, these players could already move across the main continent unhindered. It's nothing. Since Zero Wing thinks we are pushovers, this old man will let everyone know what we are capable of, Windshadow said as he looked at Lu Xinglua, who appeared rather inhuman, with indifferent eyes. He then shifted his attention to the man behind Lu Xinglua and asked, "Guild leader Xinglua, won't you introduce the expert behind you?" If one were to say that Lu Xinglua currently resembled a demonkin, then the mysterious, bandaged man sitting behind Lu Xinglua was a real demon. Although the bandaged man did not reveal his aura, he still made Windshadow feel threatened. "Oh right, I nearly forgot." Chuckling, Lu Xinglua said, "Let me introduce you. This person here is the real owner of Saint's Hand, guild leader Beast Emperor." Lu Xinglua's introduction surprised Windshadow slightly. "I never thought that Saint's Hand would actually be the claws of the evil god's temple." Looking at the faux saint army on the ground below, Windshadow said, "If that's the case, these faux saint monsters should be special evil beasts in disguise, right?" "That is incorrect, Elder Windshadow. This isn't a disguise but an evolution," Beast Emperor said, smiling. "Now that you've witnessed the power of the faux saint army, if you need its help in the future, feel free to contact me through Xinglua, Elder Windshadow. That won't be necessary for 100 Ghosts. However, it seems you have quite a grudge against Zero Wing, Lord Beast Emperor," Windshadow said as he glanced at the 1,000 mythic-ranked faux saint monsters marching at the front of the faux saint army. Such a large-scale operation will definitely attract the attention of the Twin Towers Kingdom's NPC army. If they move, I believe your faux saint army will suffer severe losses. "You've misunderstood me, Elder Windshadow. I might have a grudge against Zero Wing, but I would very much like to thank Black Flame. If not for his help, I wouldn't have gotten this far. I am here now only to help Xinglua with his problem, as well as meet with my old friend Black Flame," Beast Emperor retorted nonchalantly. It was as if he placed no importance on the kingdom's army whatsoever. "I see. Since that's the case, do you mind leaving Black Flame and Zero Wing's Tier 4 experts to us?" Windshadow asked. "No problem." Nodding, Beast Emperor said, "I only want their corpses." After Windshadow and Beast Emperor reached an agreement, they continued toward the Secret Covenant Tower. While the two powers were traveling to the Secret Covenant Tower, two people riding a blazing dragon were observing their movements from far away using a magic mirror. "Amazing! I never thought that Beast Emperor would actually be Saint's Hand's true guild leader." Looking at Windshadow's and Beast Emperor's figures displayed on the magic mirror, Cold Shadow smiled and said, "With those 300 monsters from 100 Ghosts joining in, Zero Wing really is doomed this time. Should we still go to the Secret Covenant Tower, then?" Whitefeather asked. "No. Now that such a large army is heading to the tower, We might get dragged into the fight if we aren't careful, Cold Shadow replied, shaking her head. If Zero Wing doesn't concede the tower this time, it will definitely suffer a heavy loss. Right now, 100 Ghosts and Beast Emperor pose more of a danger to us. We need to head back now and make the necessary preparations. The War of Worlds will be coming soon. After saying so, Cold Shadow took out a return scroll and teleported back to the Fire Dragon Empire. She had no intention of watching the upcoming fight whatsoever. After all, the fight's outcome was a no-brainer. Rather than watching a walkover, her time would be better spent improving her strength. In the meantime, the members of Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor who were grinding inside the Secret Covenant Tower had assembled outside the tower at the behest of their guild's executives. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. After seeing that everyone was gathered, Flying Shadow approached Shifeng and reported, "Guild leader, everyone grinding inside the tower has come out. They are ready to be dispatched at any time." Nodding, Shifeng said, "Good. Have everyone get ready. Also, place those at the Advanced Magician Standard and above in a separate group." "Yes, sir." Flying Shadow promptly executed Shifeng's instructions. While Flying Shadow was sorting out the assembled players, Shifeng flew several thousand yards away from the Secret Covenant Tower and began chanting an incantation. After he had chanted for 30 seconds, the region suddenly darkened as a gigantic magic array with a radius of several thousand yards suddenly appeared in the sky. This was undoubtedly the largest magic array anyone present had ever seen. However, before anyone could react to the situation, a metal fortress that was as large as a mountain slowly emerged from the magic array. Chapter 28-21 Astonishing Mobile Fortress. The metal fortress gradually descended from the sky, its whole figure eventually appearing before everyone's eyes. Silence fell over the entire region. From a distance, the metal behemoth several kilometers wide and hundreds of meters tall hovering about a dozen meters above the ground looked like some kind of slumbering island monster. With the appearance of this metal behemoth, the mana within a 10,000-yard radius began converging upon it. Even the players standing several hundred yards away could sense dense mana flowing around them. Everyone's eyes nearly fell out of their sockets. Even Flying Shadow, who had seen many spectacular sights throughout his career in God's domain, was dumbfounded. Only after a long time had passed did he manage to snap out of his daze. A sky city? No. This is a fortress. Moreover, it's a sky fortress capable of movement. A sky fortress? I must be dreaming. When the gathered players recovered from their initial shock, exclamations rang out one after another. As everyone gazed at the steel fortress in front of them, their minds churned with excitement, disbelief, and madness. Unyielding Souls and Crimson Emperor's members, in particular, eyed Zero Wing's members with envy. At this time, God's domain had already become something like a real world. For many people, the game was an important part of their lives. Numerous fantastic sceneries that couldn't be found in the real world could be found in God's domain. Moreover, there were still countless unexplored maps and unknown sceneries awaiting discovery. In this wonderful world, everyone had their own dreams. Among these dreams, the biggest one would most likely be to gain the ability to fly freely in the sky. However, flying mounts were incredibly rare in God's domain, not something ordinary experts could get their hands on. Even the various superpowers only had a few flying mounts. Yet in an era where there were hardly any flying mounts, Zero Wing had actually obtained a sky fortress. Who wouldn't grow crazy and envious over this fact? Looking at the assembled players' shocked expressions, Shifeng chuckled and said, "All right, I've already granted entry access to everyone. You can now head inside. The magician team, follow me." In reality, even Shifeng harbored a great yearning for the mobile fortress. In the past, he could only look at the various super guilds' mobile fortresses from afar. As these mobile fortresses were generally deployed to strategic locations, such as level 150+ maps, they were never opened to the public. At most, those super guilds would allow their allies to visit their mobile fortresses. Everyone else was barred from entering now, He had finally gained a mobile fortress of his own. As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, the gathered crowd promptly jumped into the fortress's open steel gate. The moment everyone entered the fortress, they sustained another shock. This was because the mobile fortress's interior was like a completely different world compared to outside. B greater than E/B. Not only did the fortress's interior have astonishingly dense mana, but it also increased players' affinity with mana. Even those insensitive to mana could feel their affinity with mana improving significantly. The environmental effects of this fortress were far superior to those of any city they had ever visited. Most importantly, when inside the fortress, everyone could feel the foreign energy corroding their bodies vanishing rapidly. After making some rough calculations, they concluded that resting for 1 hour inside the fortress yielded the same recovery effects as resting for 1 day in the outside world. This benefit would greatly enhance their leveling speed. Moreover, the boost to concentration recovery in the fortress was at least 2 or 3 times stronger than in the various guild cities. Crap. If I can rest and train my skills here, I can probably get twice the results I'd get from training in Stone Forest City's combat rooms. You'd probably get even better results if you train combat techniques here, since combat techniques place much greater emphasis on mana control. Meanwhile, the boost to mana affinity this place provides would most likely improve one's mana control by a significant margin. After everyone entered the mobile fortress, they quickly understood its hidden benefits, and their eyes glowed with excitement. Resting was an important part of a player's life in God's domain. In fact, resting accounted for around 1/3 of the time most players spend in the game. Even combat fanatics spent at least 1/5 of their time resting. This was especially true for players grinding in level 100+ neutral maps, where foreign energies constantly corroded their bodies. After the corrosion reached a certain extent, players would have to rest even if they didn't want to. Otherwise, death would claim them. Hence, rest areas were incredibly important for players. So long as a player had a good place to rest in, their leveling speed and self-improvement speed would both improve significantly. This was especially true for expert players. Peak experts would even pay high prices to visit the capitals of kingdoms and empires just to recover quickly. This was because these cities sold foods and beverages that could greatly enhance recovery rates, as well as offer other buffs. If not for the high price tags of these delicacies, even ordinary experts would fight to buy them. After Shifeng entered the mobile fortress, he led the magician team straight to the fortress lord's mansion. Looking at the 1,000+ advanced magicians before him, Shifeng said, "The fortress's magic arrays are fully operational now. What I need you to do is work in shifts of 300 to maintain the normal operation of these magic arrays. Do you have any questions?" The mobile fortress was mainly made up of magic crystals, and most of its operations relied on mana. Hence, a lot of manpower was required to operate it. This small mobile fortress needed 300 advanced magicians to keep its magic arrays fully operational. In addition, the mobile fortress consumed a lot more magic crystals than guild cities. Just its normal operation mode cost 50,000 magic crystals per day. If the fortress's offensive and defensive magic arrays were activated as well, this cost would zoom. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. It was fortunate that Shifeng was incredibly wealthy right now. Even after deducting the magic crystals used in the mobile fortress's construction, he still had 5.8 million magic crystals left. Otherwise, even if he had completed the mobile fortress, he wouldn't have dared activate it. After all, Zero Wing still had many areas it needed magic crystals for. "Leave it to us, Guild Leader Black Flame. We will make sure nothing goes wrong with these magic arrays." The advanced magicians responded enthusiastically, none of them dissatisfied at getting assigned the menial task of maintaining magic arrays. This was because the benefits of working in the Fortress Lord's mansion were practically visible to the naked eye. The mana inside the mansion was much denser than the mana outside, and the boost in mana affinity was much stronger as well. This place was not only an excellent rest area but also an excellent training environment for magicians like themselves. They couldn't find such a wonderful environment in the outside world even if they wanted to. Meanwhile, less than half an hour after the mobile fortress appeared, news of its existence spread like wildfire. In no time at all, word of it appeared on the Twin Towers Kingdom's official forums. Sky Fortress appears beside the secret Covenant Tower. For a time, players throughout the kingdom were in an uproar. Chapter 28-22, Pinnacle of God's Domain, a Sky Fortress. What's going on? This is a lie. This is definitely a lie. How can such a thing appear at this stage of the game? There are pictures and videos of it. I heard that the fortress's interior is a paradise for training. It even provides a significant boost to mana affinity. Zero Wing is really on the rise now. When news regarding the small mobile fortress first broke out in the Twin Towers Kingdom, many people refused to believe it. After all, no matter how they thought about it, they simply couldn't see how Zero Wing could come to possess such a mythical fortress. However, the information leak came with photographic and video evidence. Even if everyone refused to believe the report, they couldn't change the fact that Zero Wing owned a flying fortress. The leaked videos showed a fortress hundreds of meters tall, covered in all kinds of magic runes, hovering in the sky above the secret Covenant Tower. A faint layer of mist enveloped the fortress. From afar, it looked like a city found in paradise. No words could describe how spectacular the fortress was. This Sky Fortress looks so cool. The view from up there will definitely be amazing. When will this Sky Fortress be open to the public? I heard Zero Wing is limiting entry to its members and allies. I doubt anyone else will have the chance to visit the fortress. After all, it isn't particularly large. It should house 1 or 2 million people at most. Moreover, it is even being used to garrison the secret Covenant Tower. Zero Wing isn't letting any outsiders get close to the tower now, let alone the Sky Fortress. I'm joining Zero Wing. I must join Zero Wing. The Twin Towers Kingdom's players, both independent and guild members, couldn't help drooling when they saw the Sky Fortress above the secret Covenant Tower. Many independent players immediately thought of joining Zero Wing. The fight in Sky Spring City had already proven that Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor's rule over the city and the secret Covenant Tower was unshakable. Zero Wing even revealed that it had 5 Tier 4 players, far surpassing the various superpowers. The addition of the Sky Fortress basically solidified Zero Wing's hold over the secret Covenant Tower. Now, it would be utterly impossible for the various superpowers to compete with Zero Wing when it came to providing their members with an excellent leveling spot. For a time, the number of players visiting Zero Wing's residences to apply for guild membership skyrocketed. The atmosphere within Zero Wing was also boiling, with many members celebrating the fact that they had not rashly quit the guild. Meanwhile, Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words arrived in front of the secret Covenant Tower together with a bunch of Tier 3 experts. When they saw the mobile fortress floating above the tower, despite having long known about the fortress, they were still shocked. After all, the mobile fortress was simply too overwhelming. Tier 3 players might not be able to tell, but as Tier 4 players, the two of them could clearly feel that all the mana within a 10,000-yard radius had converged upon the fortress. This was an unimaginable amount of mana. Most importantly, the mobile fortress was capable of movement. Just this point alone made it invincible. After all, if the fortress faced an insurmountable opponent in a certain location, it could simply transfer elsewhere. With this mobile fortress, Zero Wing has truly reached the pinnacle of God's domain, Unyielding Heart said enviously as he looked at the mobile fortress. He couldn't help sighing ruefully. Back when he first learned of Zero Wing's existence, Zero Wing had only been a small guild. Now, even Unyielding Soul had to look up to it. Of course, Zero Wing's foundation was still weak. However, so long as the guild could maintain its hold over the secret Covenant Tower, its rise would be inevitable. Nodding in agreement with Unyielding Heart's words, Illusory Words said, "Although I don't know whether we can successfully defend the secret Covenant Tower, even if we fail, it wouldn't affect Zero Wing by much. With this mobile fortress, Zero Wing can simply set up shop in a level 130 map. At that time, the leveling speed of its members wouldn't be in any way inferior to grinding in the tower. They just wouldn't be able to produce Tier 3 players as quickly as before. Previously, Zero Wing could be described as a ferocious tiger. While it was incredibly strong in one-on-one combat, it was still vulnerable against multiple strong opponents. However, after gaining the mobile fortress, Zero Wing had become a behemoth that no superpower could threaten. Even economic suppression would no longer be effective against it. Let's hurry inside. Looking at the time, Unyielding Heart said, the Faux Saint army should arrive in just a few more hours. Mitchum. If we can defend the tower, our 2 guilds might be able to contest with those super guilds, Illusory Words said, glancing at the secret Covenant tower behind her. She then led her subordinates into the mobile fortress. While the 3 guilds' Tier 3 experts were entering the mobile fortress one after another, the distant Faux Saint army was steadily making its way to the secret Covenant tower. Throughout its march, the army continuously devoured the players and NPCs it came across, adding to its numbers. Lord Beast Emperor, will we have any problems with the mobile fortress Zero Wing brought out? Lu Xingla asked worriedly as he looked at Beast Emperor. According to reports, more than 40,000 Tier 3 players have also gathered in the fortress. The fight in Sky Spring City had gutted Starlink's combat power. The guild would take a long time to recover from this loss. If he failed to secure the secret Covenant tower this time, he would most likely have to lie low for some time. Someone might even replace him as Starlink's guild leader. He had a very good understanding of that old undead's personality. That person definitely wouldn't let him remain as Starlink's guild leader simply because he was the heir of a major corporation. After all, the only reason 100 Ghosts was even willing to partner with Starlink was that old undead. It had nothing to do with him at all. Meanwhile, the defensive capabilities of a fortress far surpassed those of a guild city. Zero Wing's mobile fortress definitely wouldn't have any problems defending against the attacks of Tier 4 mythic monsters. Relax. This mobile fortress might pose a problem for other people since it is floating in the sky, but you shouldn't forget that mythic-ranked Faux Saint monsters can fly. They are walking now only because they need to protect the Great Lords and Grand Lords, Beast Emperor replied nonchalantly. A fortress might be capable of blocking the attacks of mythic monsters, but doing so should still consume a large amount of mana. How long do you think a fortress can last against the bombardment of 1,000 mythic monsters? If they had only several dozen mythic monsters, they would indeed be helpless against a fortress. After all, the attacks of mythic monsters couldn't exceed the defensive threshold of a fortress's defensive magic array. However, 1,000 mythic monsters would be a different story. The attack of each mythic monster might deplete only a small portion of the defensive magic array's mana, but when multiplied by 1,000, even a main city's defensive magic array wouldn't last very long. Yes, you're right. Who can possibly go up against 1,000 mythic monsters? Lu Xingluo regained his confidence when he looked at the mythic-ranked Faux Saint monsters marching on the ground below. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. A fortress might be amazing, but there was also strength in numbers. After saying so, Lu Xingluo looked at the giant serpent flying nearby, a cold glint appearing in his eyes. 100 Ghosts' ancient demonic serpent was an extraordinary existence. Not only was the flying mount itself at the Tier 4 mythic standard, but it was also a legendary flying mount, one of the rulers of the sky during ancient times. According to rumors, the strength of the ancient demonic serpent's bloodline was close to rivaling that of dragons. In air combat, the combat power it could display surpassed even that of a flying ship. Hence, their side wouldn't necessarily lose to Zero Wing's mobile fortress in air combat. Time passed quickly. After traveling for another 6 hours, Lu Xingluo and Beast Emperor saw a gigantic, floating fortress on the distant horizon. So, that is the mobile fortress? Beast Emperor was a little surprised when he first laid eyes on the mobile fortress. Afterward, though, a smirk appeared on his face. Black Flame, I admit that you are indeed capable. However, I wonder if you'll go mad if I destroy this fortress of yours? After saying so, Beast Emperor gestured with his hand. In response, his army's 1,000 mythic-ranked Faux Saint Scepters took to the skies and flew straight toward the mobile fortress. Their speed in the air was just slightly inferior to that of flying mounts, and they gave Zero Wing's side no time to react whatsoever. Chapter 28-23, Fortress's abilities. The 1,000 faux Saint Saboteurs flew across the sky with their 10-meter-tall bodies. From the mobile fortress's perspective, they looked like a dark cloud flowing toward it. In addition, over 1 million faux Saint monsters marched toward the fortress on the ground. The ground shook with every step these monsters took, the spectacular sight stupefying the players standing guard on the mobile fortress. It seems we can't underestimate this beast emperor after all. Despite being only a puppet of the evil god, he's actually capable of mobilizing so many mythic monsters. With this, even if we don't make a move, Zero Wing probably won't last very long, a 5-meter-tall, middle-aged man atop the ancient demonic serpent said. Laughing, he continued, "We won't even get to teach Zero Wing a lesson now." Although this golden-armored giant only spoke normally, his deep voice made the surrounding space tremble. If Shi Feng were here, he would definitely be shocked to see this golden-armored giant. This middle-aged man was not only a bona fide giant but also a level 133, tier 4 berserker. The surrounding space already grew heavier just from the aura he exuded. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. With this, we can avoid exposing our strength and reduce the Black Knight Legion's expenditure, Windshadow said as he looked at the faux Saint monsters above and below him. Don't forget that our goal this time is to rescue that good-for-nothing brat from Sky Spring City's prison. Dealing with Zero Wing is secondary. I guess you're right. Let's hope Sky Spring City's magistrate can let me stretch my muscles a little, the golden-armored giant said, nodding while Windshadow and the golden-armored giant were conversing. Jade Leaf, who sat at a side, dared not utter a word, shame filling her face. Protecting and rescuing Awakened Abyss should have been her job, yet she had to turn to Elder Windshadow and Long Day, the vice-commander of 100 Ghosts' main force, for help. This was a severe dereliction of duty on her part. She was very likely to get removed from the priority list for training when she returned to the guild's headquarters. After all, not only was Awakened Abyss one of 100 Ghosts' top talents, but his status was one that even Elder Windshadow dared not offend. Inside the mobile fortress, Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words saw the overwhelming army of faux Saint monsters and couldn't help gasping in shock. Although they had long since known that their enemy consisted of over 1 million faux Saint monsters and 1,000 faux Saint saboteurs, this terrifying scene still frightened them. The faux Saint army on the ground aside, just the 1,000 faux Saint saboteurs in the air already posed a massive threat. Such a large force of mythic monsters could easily break through even the defensive magic arrays of NPC cities. Generally, fortresses possessed significantly stronger defensive magic arrays than cities. However, the mobile fortress was different from a stationary fortress. To gain the convenience of movement, the mobile fortress sacrificed a portion of its defensive capabilities. Hence, while the mobile fortress was still capable of blocking the attacks of these faux Saint saboteurs, it was unknown how long it could continue doing so. Once the defensive barrier broke, these faux Saint saboteurs would slaughter the players inside the fortress. Even Tier 4 players like themselves wouldn't be able to stop these monsters. After all, the difference in numbers was simply too massive. Everyone, get ready. Attack with everything you've got once these faux Saint monsters enter within range. Unyielding Heart shouted. Remember, do not hold back anything. Fight with everything you've got right off the bat. Only by removing these mythic monsters as soon as possible will we have a greater chance of victory. Yes, sir. When the players stationed atop of the fortress walls saw the approaching faux Saint saboteurs, they couldn't help gulping nervously. The outcome of the upcoming battle would be decided by whether they managed to finish off these faux Saint saboteurs before the latter destroyed the fortress's defensive magic array. This would be a race against the duration of the defensive barrier. Meanwhile, on the Fortress Lord's mansion's top floor, which was also the highest point in the fortress. Guild leader, they're here, Fire Dance reported. When the faux Saint saboteurs were less than 1,000 yards away from the fortress, she asked nervously, should we start attacking now? No, let them come closer, Shi Feng said, shaking his head. The mobile fortress had 26 large magic elven cannons and 8 magic charging towers. Its overall firepower exceeded that of guild cities by leaps and bounds. However, this frightening firepower came at an equally frightening cost. Every shot the large magic elven cannons fired cost 6,000 magic crystals, and they had a cooldown of 1 minute. As for the magic charging towers, they cost 20,000 magic crystals to fire each time and had a cooldown of 3 minutes. Although Shi Feng had over 5 million magic crystals on hand, he still couldn't afford to employ these weapons freely. Hence, they had to make the most of every shot. Meanwhile, a distance of 1,000 yards was practically nothing to the mythic-ranked foes Saint Saboteurs. Just 3 seconds later, they appeared before the mobile fortress's defensive barrier. Immediately afterward, all 1,000 foes Saint Saboteurs raised the various weapons they held and launched a barrage of ruthless attacks on the defensive barrier. The next moment, deafening noises came from outside the mobile fortress. Numerous spatial tears also appeared around the fortress's defensive barrier. The barrier itself trembled violently, and even the players inside the fortress could clearly sense the power of the attacks. Outside the mobile fortress, the thunderous assault was audible even from over 10,000 yards away. What powerful attacks! If it were a guild city's defensive magic array, it would have most likely crumbled at the first wave of attacks, Long Day exclaimed in astonishment. The simultaneous attacks of 1,000 mythic monsters were simply earth-shattering. Even a Tier 5 large-scale destruction spell would pale in comparison to this barrage. Jade Leaf also nodded in agreement. Even an NPC main city's defensive magic array would suffer tremendously before this combined attack, let alone a measly mobile fortress. However, when the attacks ended, 100 Ghosts' members and the players standing atop the mobile fortress's walls were all stunned. It's fine. At this time, not only were there no cracks on the defensive barrier, but the magic power oscillation from the barrier also remained frighteningly smooth and steady. It was evident that the foe Saint Saboteurs' attacks failed to reach the barrier's defensive limit. Meanwhile, at the Fortress Lord's mansion, Fire Dance goggled in shock. Isn't this barrier a little too strong? She had a clear view of the defensive barrier's energy level right now. Let alone 1%, the barrier barely lost 0.1% of its mana reserves after the foe Saint Saboteurs' first wave of attacks. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Given a depletion rate of 0.1% per second, the foe Saint Saboteurs would take 166 minutes to break the barrier. However, the barrier's mana reserves could be replenished at intervals of 30 minutes, with each restoration costing 100,000 magic crystals. In other words, so long as they had sufficient magic crystals, the 1,000 mythic monsters before them wouldn't be able to destroy the mobile fortress's defensive magic array, no matter what. Not bad, Shi Feng said calmly. Inwardly, though, he too was surprised by this outcome. He never thought that the mobile fortress's defensive capabilities were so amazing. No wonder the mobile fortresses I saw in my previous life were capable of blocking the attacks of even Tier 5 players. The next moment, Shi Feng turned to Fire Dance and said, "Have the ones below start testing the power of the magic elven cannons." Chapter 28-24, Silent World. At Shi Feng's command, Fire Dance notified the players stationed at the 26 large magic elven cannons. In response, all 26 cannons in the mobile fortress began gathering and condensing mana from their surroundings. The originally mist-like mana liquefied. The condensed liquid mana then flowed into the cannons. A short moment later, a crimson, threefold magic array appeared before the muzzles of these cannons, the tremendous power these magic arrays carried distorting the surrounding space. The next moment, after the foe Saint Saboteurs completed their third barrage, 26 crimson beams shot into the dusky sky all of a sudden. These beams of light then burst in midair, and numerous smaller beams rained down on the mythic monsters. Even though the foe Saint Saboteurs had reacted quickly to the attack, they were somewhat crowded, so most of them still ended up engulfed by the crimson rain. When the crimson rain ended, what entered everyone's eyes were the foe Saint Saboteurs' battered bodies. Every mythic monster that got caught under the red rain had burn marks mottling their bodies, with some even on fire. Meanwhile, the attacked foe Saint Saboteurs 7.3 billion HP fell below 5 billion, with some even having only around 4 billion HP remaining. Aren't those cannons a little too powerful? Unyielding Heart, who was commanding the battle from the wall, was astonished at this sudden turn of events. Normally, killing mythic monsters was a long and arduous process. Yet, the large elven magic cannons dealt over 200 million damage per attack. Moreover, their AoE covered at least an 800-yard radius. Had the foe Saint Saboteurs positioned themselves more closely together, just one volley from the 26 cannons might have been enough to reduce the HP of these mythic monsters to a critical level, and 2 volleys would be enough to wipe them out of existence. At this time, let alone the players inside the mobile fortress, even Lu Xinglua and Beast Emperor were thunderstruck. How is this possible? How can a fortress possess such strong offensive capabilities? Lu Xinglua felt his brain freezing when he saw that the foe Saint Saboteurs had lost a quarter of their HP from just one volley. He had seen fortresses before. He had also seen fortresses dealing with monster tides before. From what he had seen, fortresses indeed possessed incredible offensive capabilities. Even facing an army of 100,000 monsters and over a dozen mythic monsters, a fortress could easily emerge victorious within an hour. However, what was up with this mobile fortress in front of him? The mobile fortress's cannons had actually reaped a quarter of the foe Saint Saboteurs' HP with just one volley. In other words, just 4 cannon volleys would be enough to annihilate most of the saboteurs. At this time, even 100 Ghosts' members, who were watching the fun from afar, were shocked by this outcome. They never thought that the mobile fortress would possess such puissant offensive capabilities. Although they had the means to evade the attacks of these large magic elven cannons, just one mistake would mean an express trip to the afterlife for them. Only the ancient demonic serpent could possibly endure a blow from the cannons. Out of everyone on the battlefield, only Shifeng didn't find this outcome surprising. After all, the mobile fortress was a stronghold capable of resisting Tier 5 existences. If it didn't even have the ability to go up against a group of Tier 4 monsters, how could it go up against Tier 5 monsters? However, Shifeng's heart still ached after this volley. After all, the 26 shots fired cost 156,000 magic crystals in total. Converted to coins, that was 62,400 gold. While Shifeng was feeling distressed, Beast Emperor hurriedly gave out a command to the foe Saint Saboteurs. Spread out and attack from all directions. I refuse to believe they can fire those cannons without limit. The use of any strategic weapon in God's domain came at a great price. Given the effects of the large magic elven cannons, he doubted that Zero Wing could keep on firing those things forever. Following Beast Emperor's command, the foe Saint Saboteurs promptly scattered around the mobile fortress. Now, each cannon fire would hit several dozen saboteurs, at most, simultaneously. In this scenario, it would take several hundred shots from the cannons to annihilate all 1,000 saboteurs. Despite seeing this situation, Shifeng remained unfazed. Start the magic charging towers as well. Yes, sir. Upon hearing Shifeng's command, Fire Dance couldn't help feeling a little excited. If the large magic elven cannon's attack was a fusillade, then the magic charging tower's attack was a carpet bombing. Moreover, its power reached the Tier 5 threshold. Immediately, the 8 magic charging towers scattered across the mobile fortress began accumulating mana, transforming into 8 miniature suns that brightly illuminated the entire fortress. Before the foe Saint Saboteurs could react to this development, the 8 miniature suns shot into the sky and transformed into 8 threefold magic arrays, each covering a 2,000-yard radius. These gigantic magic arrays extended over not only the entirety of the mobile fortress but also everything within a 2,000-yard radius of the fortress. What? Have they lost their minds? Lu Xinglua was thunderstruck when he saw the 8 gigantic magic arrays in the sky. While he didn't know exactly how powerful these magic arrays were, going by the fact that they had drawn in all mana within a 10,000-yard radius, he could easily imagine how powerful they were. However, These magic arrays didn't cover just the faux Saint Saboteurs. Even the mobile fortress itself lay within the magic array's AoE. By deploying these magic arrays, Zero Wing was basically saying it intended to die with the saboteurs. Run. All of you, run away. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU seeing the 8 magic arrays panicked Beast Emperor into ordering the faux Saint army to retreat because the faux Saint saboteurs weren't the only ones caught within the magic array's AoE. The magic arrays also covered 1/3 of the faux Saint army on the ground. For a time, the faux Saint saboteurs in the air and the faux Saint monsters on the ground all could be seen turning around and fleeing. However, the 8 magic arrays in the sky were simply too massive. Before any of the faux Saint saboteurs could fly more than 1,000 yards away from the mobile fortress, a white light descended from the 8 magic arrays. The next moment, everything within a 2,000-yard radius of the mobile fortress transformed into a world of white, the appearance of this white world bringing silence to the entire battlefield. Meanwhile, this white pillar of light was clearly visible even from tens of thousands of yards away. What's happening over there? That place should be where the secret Covenant Tower is. We can see it all the way from Sky Spring City. Just how big is the coverage of that beam? Most players in Sky Spring City were ignorant of the battle taking place at the secret Covenant Tower, so they couldn't help growing curious when they saw a white pillar of light suddenly appear in the distance. As for the player forces who knew of the battle, because of their insufficient strength, they could only spectate from a safe distance. Shortly afterward, the light pillar gradually dissipated. The faux Saint army on the ground had also disappeared, and in their place were craters several dozen meters deep. As for the mythic-ranked faux Saint saboteurs in the air, they fell to the ground one after another at this time. Although these saboteurs were still alive, every one of them had fallen into a heavily injured state, and their current combat power was nowhere near what they had before. Chapter 28-25, All-encompassing Seal, 8,000 mythic faux Saint monsters got done in, just like that? When Unyielding Heart and the others standing on the mobile fortress's walls looked at the faux Saint saboteurs scattered on the ground and saw that these mythic monsters had less than 1/3 of their HPs remaining, they couldn't help gaping in shock. They had all anticipated a bitter fight. They had even prepared themselves to fight day and night and suffer innumerable casualties. After all, the faux Saint monsters possessed above-average combat standards and cunning minds. Their ability to learn and improve on combat techniques also made them increasingly tougher to fight as the battle went on. Moreover, their high HPs meant these faux Saint monsters could stay in battle for long periods. However, with just 2 rounds of attacks, the mobile fortress had heavily injured the 1,000 mythic-ranked faux Saint saboteurs and killed several 100,000 lower-ranked faux Saint monsters. This wasn't a battle but a one-sided massacre. No wonder he never paid any attention to the various superpowers from the very beginning. With this mobile fortress, even the 5 great super guilds would be helpless against the present Zero Wing. Unyielding Heart smiled bitterly when he looked at the land of death below the fortress. Whether it was Starlink or 100 Ghosts, neither of them mattered in front of the mobile fortress. Meanwhile, atop the fortress lord's mansion, Shifeng's heart ached once more. Activating all 8 magic charging towers had cost him 160,000 magic crystals. At this stage of the game, even first-rate guilds would have 400,000 magic crystals, at most, in their stockpile. He had burned through nearly half of a first-rate guild's magic crystal stockpile in just 1 round of attacks. On the other hand, outside the mobile fortress, 100 Ghosts' members, Lu Xinghua, and Beast Emperor all remained silent for a long time upon seeing the magic charging tower's attacks. Beast Emperor was especially shocked by this outcome. Originally, he thought that with his army of 1,000,000 faux Saint monsters, he could trample over the entire Twin Towers kingdom, that nobody short of the kingdom's NPC army would be a match for his army. As for 100 Ghosts' members, they also felt pressured by this outcome. After all, the mythic-ranked faux Saint saboteurs had survived the mobile fortress's attacks due only to their high HP. If players like themselves were to suffer a hit from one of these attacks, they would die without question. At this time, Jade Leaf turned to Windshadow and said, "Elder Windshadow, this mobile fortress is too powerful. If we charge in blindly, I'm afraid our chances are slim. In air combat, the ancient demonic serpent was indeed powerful. It could even go up against a handful of faux saint saboteurs simultaneously and still hold the upper hand. However, even if the ancient demonic serpent could survive the mobile fortress's heaven-defying blow, the Flying Mount's passengers, would most definitely be reduced to ashes. Not to mention, despite the mutually destructive blow, the mobile fortress's defensive barrier remained intact. Such being the case, even the ancient demonic serpent's strongest blow would only exhaust some of the barrier's energy reserves. After hesitating for some time, Windshadow announced, "We're retreating." The ancient demonic serpent was a Tier 4 legendary flying mount. Its strongest blow touched upon the threshold of Tier 5, an attack that even an advanced Guild City's defensive magic array couldn't withstand. Originally, Windshadow believed that, while the mobile fortress's defensive magic array might be strong, destroying it shouldn't be a problem for the ancient demonic serpent, given enough time. However, let alone destroying the barrier, just surviving that purifying light would be a problem. Since it was evident they couldn't do anything against the mobile fortress, they naturally had no reason to remain here. At this time, Windshadow wasn't the only person with such thoughts. Beast Emperor similarly commanded his faux saint army to retreat immediately. After ordering a retreat, Beast Emperor looked at Lu Xingluo and said, "Let's go. There's no point in staying here anymore." Trying to clash with the mobile fortress now was simply suicidal. Their only choice was to retreat and figure out other options to deal with the fortress. Securing the secret Covenant Tower was also no longer possible. So long as the mobile fortress remained in the tower's vicinity, they couldn't do anything about the tower. "Lord Beast Emperor, don't you have any way at all? I've bet everything on you," Lu Xingluo said, looking at Beast Emperor with crazed eyes. Starlink had suffered a massive blow from the battle in Sky Spring City. He would be finished if he failed to secure the secret Covenant Tower as well. "Xingluo, you might not be able to return to Starlink, but with the Starline Corporation's financial strength, you can still follow me," Beast Emperor consoled. "You've seen for yourself how quickly the faux saint army expands. It will only grow stronger from now on. Even that old undead backing, you won't be able to go up against the faux saint army in the future. As for Zero Wing, I will eventually erase its existence from God's domain." When Beast Emperor mentioned the name Zero Wing, his voice grew cold. If not for Zero Wing's interference, his army would have long since trampled over Starmoon Kingdom and the Black Dragon Empire. He wouldn't have had to resort to creating Saint's Hand, an organization filled with cunning opportunists, to help him. As for the losses he suffered this time, he didn't place much importance on them. After all, for his current self, faux saint monsters below mythic rank were incredibly easy to produce. As for the mythic-ranked faux saint saboteurs, while they were severely weakened right now, if they focused on fleeing, nobody could stop them. Zero Wing would be able to kill only a few of them at most. In addition, after today's event, he finally understood the reason for Zero Wing's confidence. Now, all he needed to do was wait. He would wait until he produced a Tier 5 faux saint monster. So long as a Tier 5 faux saint monster appeared, let alone Zero Wing's mobile fortress, even God's domain's various kingdoms and empires would no longer pose a threat to him. However, producing a Tier 5 faux saint monster wasn't an easy task. It required a large number of Tier 4 faux saint monsters to serve as a base, as well as a large amount of resources. Only after fulfilling these two conditions could he produce a Tier 5 faux saint monster. Meanwhile, Lu Xingluo, the heir of the Starline Corporation, was the perfect cash cow to help him fulfill these requirements. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. After hearing Beast Emperor's words, Lu Xingluo could only nod in frustration, throwing in his lot with Beast Emperor. From today onward, he would stand against the players of God's domain and acquire the upper zone resources he needed from Beast Emperor. This was also Lu Xingluo's only option. Otherwise, let alone the position of Starlink's guild leader, he might even get replaced as the Starline Corporation's heir. After all, there were still several reserve heirs in the corporation eagerly waiting to supplant him. Upon seeing the distant dark fire crow and ancient demonic serpent turning around and leaving, Fire Dance smiled and said, "Guild leader, it seems they plan to retreat." She found their enemy's decision to retreat reasonable. After all, anyone would lose the will to fight after witnessing that devastating blow. Unfortunately, they couldn't deal any additional damage to the foe Saint army. Although the mobile fortress possessed incredible offensive capabilities, it had no means to seal its opponents in place. It would also be foolish to leave the safety of the fortress to pursue the foe Saint monsters. This was most likely what Lu Xinglua and the others hoped to see the most. Leave? Since they're already here, then they shouldn't think of leaving. Shi Feng smiled when he saw the retreating figures of Beast Emperor and 100 Ghosts' members. He then took out 3,000 mana stones he had synthesized beforehand and injected them into the core of the unsealed world mirror. An invisible ripple of energy immediately spread rapidly from the mobile fortress to the surroundings. A moment later, a dense layer of mist formed around the edges of the map of the secret Covenant Tower. If one looked at the map from the outside, the inside of the map would appear illusory, like it was completely isolated from the outside world. Chapter 28-26, Slaughter Time, a Map Seal. Lu Xinglua's complexion darkened when he saw the scenery in the distance blur. The mobile fortress was an unshakable existence at this stage of the game. If they couldn't leave this place now, only death awaited them. How ruthless of Black Flame. He's actually thinking of keeping all of us here? Looking at the dense mist enveloping the entire map, Beast Emperor sneered. However, he must be dreaming if he thinks he can stop us with such a wide seal. In God's domain, the larger the area a magic barrier covered, the weaker it would be. While the map-wide barrier Zero Wing deployed might seem spectacular, only a fool would think that it could stop a force of 1,000 mythic-ranked foe Saint Saboteurs. After saying so, Beast Emperor had a small number of saboteurs in relatively good condition move ahead of the army and fly straight toward the mist. Meanwhile, sharing similar thoughts with Beast Emperor, 100 Ghosts' members remained unfazed, even after seeing the whole map getting sealed. They calmly continued flying toward the map's border. Mobile Fortress, Fortress Lord's Mansion. Seeing the foe Saint army and 100 Ghosts members moving farther and farther away, Fire Dance couldn't help growing anxious. Guild leader, why don't we go after them? If we let them reach the barrier's edge, I'm afraid it'll become very difficult to keep them here. A barrier capable of sealing an entire map was indeed amazing. However, such an extensive barrier definitely couldn't rival the mobile fortress's barrier in terms of defensive capabilities. The seal would most likely break after a few attacks from the foe Saint monsters. Smiling, Shi Feng shook his head and said, "No, let them run for a while longer. We'll first clean up the nearby foe Saint Saboteurs. Have Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words start moving as well. Also, have the Elven Cannons keep an eye on the foe Saint army. If those monsters think of coming back, strike them down immediately." Other people might not understand the effects of the world mirror, but he did. Including the 2 additional crystalline mirrors he had obtained after killing those 3 NPCs from the Secret Hand Association, he now had 6 of the 12 mirrors that made up the world mirror. Although he still couldn't utilize many of the world mirror's functions since it was incomplete, he could isolate an entire map. Even Tier 5 existences would have great difficulty breaking out of this isolated region. While the foe Saint army indeed possessed great numbers, the quality of its combatants was severely inadequate. It would need over an hour of continuous attacking to deplete the world mirror's energy reserves. 1 hour was more than enough for Zero Wing to do a lot of things. Moreover, even if they couldn't finish off the foe Saint army within 1 hour, he could simply inject another 3,000 mana stones to replenish the world mirror's energy. Unlike defensive magic arrays, the world mirror did not have a cooldown for replenishing its energy reserves. The only trade-off was that once the world mirror was activated, it would remain active until it exhausted all its energy. It couldn't be turned off midway the way defensive magic arrays could. Most importantly, he had expended a lot of magic crystals in this battle. If he couldn't earn some EXP from these foe Saint monsters, he would eat a huge loss. After all, No matter how many monsters the fortress's static defenses killed, none of the defenders inside the fortress would gain any EXP. At most, the defenders would get to collect the loot of the monsters. However, the faux saint monsters were basically beggars when it came to items. Even if they did drop items, those items would be of inferior quality. Their only saving grace was the above-average EXP they provided when killed. After Shifeng finished speaking, he flew out of the mobile fortress and chased the fleeing faux saint saboteurs. Although the incomplete world mirror couldn't reduce the basic attributes of the hostile units trapped within it, it did reduce their movement speed and reaction speed. The movement speed of enemies flying in the air, in particular, was at least 60% slower. Furthermore, all of the faux saint saboteurs had suffered heavy injuries, which meant their flying speed became incredibly slow. After Shifeng's departure, Fire Dance quickly carried out his commands before leaving the mobile fortress together with Violet Cloud. As for Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9, the two of them had long since followed Shifeng out of the fortress. After all, mythic monsters were incredibly rare in the outside world. This was especially true for level 140+ mythic monsters. Now that the 1,000 faux saint saboteurs before them were heavily injured, these mythic monsters were basically walking sacks of EXP. It would be a huge waste to let them get away. In less than 10 seconds, Shifeng caught up with a group of several dozen saboteurs. He immediately brandished the Light of Two Worlds. Lightning Edge. The next moment, a river of lightning washed over the area ahead of him and extended up to 500 yards away. Damages exceeding 100 million then began appearing above the saboteurs' heads one after another. After the skill's 7-second duration ended, the saboteurs that were originally at critical HPs crumbled into ashes. Subsequently, Shifeng's experience bar rose rapidly. In just 1 second, he broke through to level 142. Sometime later, his experience bar settled at 82% of level 142. The saboteurs were far more generous with EXP than the standard mythic monster. As for the 11 saboteurs that survived his attack, Shifeng used Formless Blade, a Tier 4 legacy skill he had spent 110 legacy skill points to learn on them. The next moment, the 13 sword lights the skill created transformed into innumerable shooting stars that struck down at the critically damaged saboteurs. Every one of these attacks dealt over 200 million damage to the mythic monsters, with critical hits dealing over 400 million damage, killing them on the spot. Immediately afterward, another bright glow enveloped Shifeng as he reached level 143. Meanwhile, following the deaths of these faux saint saboteurs, strands of dark gray mist escaped from their corpses and flowed into Shifeng's mind. Every strand of mist that entered his mind increased his affinity with mana by a small margin, and this bonus could be accumulated continuously. What a magical energy! Although I still got soul marks inflicted on me like when I killed that faux saint devourer, the effect of this strange energy is completely different from the white mist from before. It is incredibly attractive to mana. Shifeng was surprised when he sensed the changes to his body. At this moment, Shifeng wasn't the only person to notice this benefit. The others who had joined in on the chase likewise noticed the benefit of killing the faux saint saboteurs. These faux saint saboteurs might not drop any loot, but they are truly walking treasure troves. If some of our Tier 3 experts get this benefit, they should have a much easier time getting promoted to Tier 4. After killing off 2 faux saint saboteurs, Unyielding Heart was surprised by the benefit he received. Some distance away, Illusory Words also killed a saboteur and noticed the unexpected benefit. Surprised, she exclaimed, "These saboteurs are probably of greater help to us Tier 4s. If we can continuously boost our mana affinity, we'll understand mana more easily. This will be of great help in breaking through the limits of our mana bodies." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. After reaching Tier 4, improving one's mana body became of utmost importance. Now, these faux saint saboteurs were providing them with a shortcut for doing so. Upon thinking up to this point, the two of them hastened their killing speed. Now, they weren't just killing the saboteurs for EXP but for the sake of further improving themselves. For a time, Shifeng and the others could be seen frenziedly mowing down the fleeing faux saint saboteurs, their levels rising rapidly. Beast Emperor, who had reached the map's border, couldn't help gnashing his teeth angrily. He had gone to great lengths to produce these faux saint saboteurs, only for them to become leveling tools for Shifeng and the others. At this time, he had already lost more than 300 saboteurs. If he weren't afraid of the mobile fortress's offensive capabilities, he definitely would have commanded every surviving saboteur to surround and kill Shifeng's group. Black Flame. I'll make you pay sooner or later, Beast Emperor bellowed, a cold glint flashing in his eyes as he glared at Shifeng, over 10,000 yards away. Meanwhile, Lu Xingluo, who sat beside Beast Emperor, also resolved to make Shifeng pay, both in God's domain and in the real world, for today's loss. Turning to the dense mist before him, Beast Emperor commanded the several hundred faux saint saboteurs around him, "Attack! Shatter this damned barrier!" Chapter 28-27, Surrender and Death. Obeying Beast Emperor's command, several hundred faux saint saboteurs swung their weapons at the dense mist before them. Although these saboteurs were heavily damaged, with their extraordinary techniques, they still managed to exhibit power at the mythic standard in their attacks. Boom! Every one of the saboteurs' attacks opened a tear in space upon impact, the spatial tears bringing momentary darkness to the area. When the spatial tears disappeared, though, both Beast Emperor and Lu Xingluo were thunderstruck. Impossible! Defying expectations, the saboteurs' all-out attacks not only failed to crack the barrier, but the barrier didn't even fluctuate in the slightest. It remained perfectly intact like before. 100 Ghosts' members were also surprised. Do these saboteurs not have enough power to shatter this barrier after being heavily injured? Jade Leaf wondered when she saw that the layer of mist remained dense despite the saboteurs' attacks. Being able to envelop an entire map and hinder teleportation and communication was already plenty amazing for a magic barrier. Yet, it was now revealed that this barrier could actually withstand the attacks of so many faux saint saboteurs. This was simply unbelievable. Nodding in agreement, Long Day, the golden armor giant, said, "They probably don't have enough destructive power. Let's make a move ourselves." "It seems that is our only option," Windshadow said. Under Windshadow's manipulation, the ancient demonic serpent immediately opened its mouth and released a breath of darkness. The power of the breath attack far exceeded that of the faux saint saboteur's attacks, the attack eradicating everything in its path. Boom! Upon collision, the space within a several hundred-yard radius of the point of impact turned into a dark void. The mist layer at that point also trembled violently, the vibrations extending several thousand yards away. Only after several seconds had passed did the mist layer revert to normal. It's still standing? Like Beast Emperor and Lu Xingluo, 100 Ghosts' members now had dumbfounded expressions on their faces. They couldn't believe what had just happened. After the ancient demonic serpent got promoted to Tier 4, its all-out attack had power at the entry level of Tier 5. Even superior mythic monsters of the same level wouldn't dare take this attack head-on. In fact, this attack could one-shot the defensive magic arrays of guild cities. Yet, when this attack struck the barrier enveloping this entire map, it failed to create even a single crack. At this time, let alone 100 Ghosts' members, even Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words, who had just caught up with the rest of the faux saint army, were stunned by this scene. Both of them could tell that the demonic serpent's attack was on par with the all-out attack of Tedelia the Soul Singer, a realm lord of the ruined mountain range. Nevertheless, the demonic serpent's attack had failed to break through the seemingly flimsy layer of mist surrounding the map. The strength of this magic barrier was simply unheard of. Since this magic barrier enveloped the entire map, its withstanding Tier 4 attacks was already unbelievable, all the more Tier 5 attacks. With the combination of this magic barrier and the mobile fortress, Zero Wing was most likely invincible in God's domain already. However, Beast Emperor and 100 Ghosts' members evidently had no intention of giving up. After snapping out of their daze, they promptly bombarded the mist layer in a frenzy. In their opinion, even if their attacks failed to destroy the barrier, their attacks had most likely exhausted a significant portion of the barrier's energy reserves. If they pressed their offensive, the barrier would crumble in no time at all. For a time, the Faux Saint army and ancient demonic serpent blitzed the magic barrier. Meanwhile, Shifeng's group mowed down the Faux Saint saboteurs they came across. 1 minute. 3 minutes. 10 minutes. At this time, Shifeng's group had already killed over 600 saboteurs. From the EXP they gained, Shifeng had reached level 146, while Fire Dance, Violet Cloud, Unyielding Heart, and Illusory Words had reached level 141. Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9 were now at level 143. When Shifeng and the others stood only 500 yards away from the Faux Saint army, Beast Emperor and 100 Ghosts' members finally snapped out of their trance and stopped assailing the barrier. They then looked at Shifeng's group and the distant mobile fortress warily. "It seems we meet again," Shifeng said, smiling as he looked at Beast Emperor and Wind Shadow. "Now, will you surrender quietly, or do you want me to send you on your way? Black Flame, don't get too full of yourself. My saboteurs have fully recovered already." Beast Emperor snarled as he glared at Shifeng. "Although I only have around 300 left, at this distance, killing you bunch won't be difficult." Beast Emperor's heart was practically bleeding from Shifeng's group killing nearly 700 of his Faux Saint saboteurs. If not for his fear of the mobile fortress, he would have long since had his Faux Saint army surround and kill Shifeng's group already. However, unlike Beast Emperor, Wind Shadow was exceptionally calm. "Greetings, Guild Leader Black Flame. I am Wind Shadow, an elder of 100 Ghosts." After taking a deep breath, Wind Shadow continued slowly. 100 Ghosts admits defeat this time. "We are willing to pay ransom for our release and the release of Awakened Abyss." "Elder Wind Shadow?" Jade Leaf was taken aback by Wind Shadow's words. 100 Ghosts was different from the guilds of the main continent. Even the 5 great super guilds were of no significance to 100 Ghosts. Yet, their guild was admitting defeat to Zero Wing. Their guild would turn into a laughingstock for the main continent's various superpowers. Moreover, they wouldn't have any way of explaining this humiliation to the guild's higher-ups. Beast Emperor and Lu Xinglua were also stunned by this situation. They never thought that Wind Shadow would surrender without hesitation. This would undoubtedly reduce their chances of defeating Zero Wing's forces. "Elder Wind Shadow, it seems 100 Ghosts only amounts to this much. To think you are already afraid of Zero Wing before we even start fighting," Beast Emperor ridiculed. "Lord Beast Emperor, 100 Ghosts operates by its own rules. Moreover, 100 Ghosts doesn't have much of a grudge against Zero Wing, to begin with. Our conflict simply stems from one of our juniors ignorantly offending Zero Wing in Sky Spring City. It is only right that he is punished," Wind Shadow retorted nonchalantly. "How righteous of you, Elder Wind Shadow. I am truly in awe." Beast Emperor glared at Wind Shadow. He had never thought that the man would care so little for 100 Ghosts' reputation. It was evident that Wind Shadow was trying to disassociate 100 Ghosts from him in front of Shifeng. Sneering, Beast Emperor said, "Unfortunately, Black Flame won't necessarily spare you." "That's right. I doubt Guild Leader Black Flame will let us off the hook so easily." Chuckling, Wind Shadow added, "But what if I say 100 Ghosts is willing to use a Tier 3 mana set equipment forging design as compensation? Have you lost your mind?" Beast Emperor exclaimed in shock. Beast Emperor could tell how powerful Tier 3 mana set equipment was just by looking at the Black Knights seated behind Wind Shadow. If not for their lower levels, they could most likely exhibit combat power on par with the Faux Saint saboteurs. Even without any Tier 4 players, just 100 Ghosts' possession of this Tier 3 mana set equipment would most likely be enough to deter the 5 great super guilds from clashing with it. Yet, Wind Shadow was actually using the forging design for this divine equipment as ransom? Let alone Beast Emperor and Lu Xinglua. Even Shifeng was stunned by Wind Shadow's offer. Originally, Shifeng had intended to make an exorbitant demand of Wind Shadow. And if Wind Shadow refused his demand, Shifeng would kill 100 Ghosts' members. After all, now that he had the mobile fortress, nobody could threaten Zero Wing's existence. Naturally, he wouldn't need to care about making an enemy of 100 Ghosts. However, Shi Feng couldn't help being moved by Windshadow's offer. Tier 3 mana set equipment was something he knew plenty about because its existence was recorded in the mana forging notes. However, the volume he owned did not include its production method. Looking at Shi Feng, Windshadow asked, "May I know if you are willing to conduct this transaction, Guild Leader Black Flame?" "Okay, I agree to your offer," Shi Feng said after giving the matter some thought. "However, I will need you to cooperate with my side to kill Beast Emperor's group. Also, my people must be the ones to land the killing blows on these saboteurs." Black Flame. Beast Emperor had the urge to charge forward and kill Shi Feng when he heard the latter's words. "Just you wait. Sooner or later, I'll..." However, before Beast Emperor could finish speaking, Shi Feng, who had been standing over 400 yards away, suddenly appeared in front of him. Tier 4 Legacy Skill, Magic Light Assault. Shi Feng's attack was so quick that nobody could react to it. By the time anyone realized what was going on, the light of two worlds had already pierced through Beast Emperor's heart. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Beige Beast Emperor was stupefied when he saw the sword stabbed in his heart. He had never dreamed that Shi Feng would take actions so decisively, leaving him with no time for any of his life-saving moves. And worse, as he was losing all his HP to one attack, he noticed Shi Feng holding a burning, pitch-black scroll. This pitch-black magic scroll was something familiar to dark players like Beast Emperor. It was the Tier 3 magic scroll Abyssal Curse. When activated, the scroll would lock onto a target and increase the target's death penalty by 3 to 5 times for 3 minutes. Lu Xinglua was dumbfounded at this scene. He never thought that Shi Feng would have such a frightening move up his sleeve. He also never thought that Beast Emperor would die, just like that. The next moment, Shi Feng drew his sword from Beast Emperor's corpse and picked up the 2 items the latter dropped. He then shifted his gaze to Lu Xinglua and smiled calmly. "Guild Leader Xinglua, it's time we settled our old debts." Chapter 28-28, Skyrocketing Levels in a towering temple built within a gloomy and silent mountain. A black flash suddenly appeared on the altar in the center of the temple. When this black flash disappeared, Beast Emperor's bandaged figure stood in its place. Apart from Beast Emperor's aura being slightly weaker, his level actually remained the same. He was still at level 132, Tier 4, despite Shi Feng having killed him just a moment ago. Black Flame, you thought you could land a blow on me using the Abyssal Curse? Dream on. I received the Immortal Body Curse from the evil god. Don't even think you can harm me so easily. When Beast Emperor recalled the moment Shi Feng killed him, he sneered. Just you wait. I already have the foundation to evolve a Tier 5 Faux Saint monster. Once I gather enough materials, I'll let your Zero Wing feel the fear of death. The Tier 4 Curse Immortal Body allowed him to get resurrected instantly at his designated evil god's temple without penalty once a day. He could also use the curse to kill himself, and even being under restraints wouldn't stop this curse from activating. This move was the trump card he prepared in case of capture by NPCs. After all, if he got caught by NPCs, particularly the War God's Temple's NPCs, he would be doomed eternally. It was also because of this curse that he no longer had to live in hiding and didn't have to fear capture. It's a pity I didn't manage to rescue Lu Xinglua. With his help, I could produce the Tier 5 Faux Saint monster much sooner. Once again, it seems I have nobody but myself to rely on, Beast Emperor thought to himself. Unlike himself, Lu Xinglua was only at Tier 3. Shi Feng could easily capture Lu Xinglua. Moreover, Lu Xinglua's previous escape from Sky Spring City had tainted his body with evil energy. If Shi Feng handed Lu Xinglua over to the War God's Temple, then it would be game over for the latter. Not only would Lu Xinglua have to create a new account, but he would also have to wait over a dozen days before he could do so. But so what if I have to rely on myself? Now that I have that great treasure, let alone 1,000 mythic faux saints, I can create even 5,000 mythic faux saints in a short time. After thinking up to this point, Beast Emperor opened his spatial bag to take out the great treasure he obtained recently. Panic surfaced on Beast Emperor's face a moment later. It's gone. After looking through his spatial bag 3 times, Beast Emperor's mind went blank. It couldn't have. At this thought, Beast Emperor's face turned ashen. Black flame. I won't rest until you're dead. Beast Emperor bellowed. The deafening roar echoed throughout the silent cavern. At the same time as Beast Emperor got resurrected, near the distant secret covenant tower, Shi Feng restrained Lu Xingluo with a darkness bind and captured him with a mobile prison. He gave Lu Xingluo no opportunity to escape or commit suicide. The entire process of Shi Feng killing Beast Emperor and imprisoning Lu Xingluo took only 5 seconds, and watching this scene play out made 100 Ghosts' members break out in a cold sweat. This was because Shi Feng's attack was astonishingly fast. Even Windshadow, a Tier 4 Shadow Dancer, had reacted to the attack only when Shi Feng was already standing in front of Beast Emperor. Moreover, the power of Shi Feng's attack was equally incredible. Apart from Tier 4 defensive classes, any other Tier 4 player would most likely die instantly if struck. Meanwhile, after Beast Emperor's death, the Faux Saint army fell into chaos, and the remaining hundreds of thousands of Faux Saint monsters began fleeing in all directions. Only the mythic-ranked Faux Saint saboteurs remained relatively calm. Knowing that they couldn't break the barrier sealing the map, the 300-plus saboteurs promptly swarmed toward Shi Feng's group in a last-ditch effort. Foolish resistance. Seeing the saboteurs' reaction, Shi Feng took out the Ring of Gospel, injected 5,000 magic crystals into the ring, and activated Miniature World. Immediately, the space within a 5,000-yard radius of Shi Feng froze. Simultaneously, a powerful pressure descended from the sky, increasing the weight of all Faux Saint monsters present and reducing their basic attributes and physique drastically. In the blink of an eye, the Faux Saint monsters had their combat power halved. World suppression? Long Day exclaimed in astonishment when he noticed the Faux Saint saboteurs' physique and speed plummeting. How many trump cards does this black flame have? Previously, he thought that the remaining 300-plus Faux Saint saboteurs would still bring Zero Wing a lot of trouble. However, seeing the present situation, he found his earlier thoughts laughable. World suppression was different from the suppression effect of ordinary magic barriers. It suppressed a person from all aspects, and even Tier 4 existences with a mana domain couldn't resist it. And if a Tier 4 existence did not possess a mana domain, they couldn't fly within the frozen space. As a result of Shi Feng's Miniature World, the Faux Saint saboteurs now possessed combat power at only the entry level of Tier 4. Every one of them had also fallen to the ground after losing their ability to fly. At this time, let alone Tier 4 players, even Tier 3 peak experts could put up a fight against these mythic monsters. Ladies and gentlemen from 100 Ghosts, can you take action now, as per our agreement? Shi Feng asked, smiling as he turned to look at 100 Ghosts' members. Or were your words from before merely a joke? You jest, Guild Leader Black Flame. We will certainly adhere to our agreement, Windshadow replied, chuckling. With a wave of his hand, he commanded, You bunch, get moving. Obeying Windshadow's command, the Black Knight Legion's members promptly intercepted the Faux Saint saboteurs. Although these Black Knights were only at Tier 3, they sported Tier 3 mana set equipment. In terms of raw power, they surpassed even the Faux Saint saboteurs when these monsters were at their peak, let alone now. The next moment, the saboteurs could be seen getting repulsed after just one exchange. They were no match for the Black Knight Legion at all. After glancing at the Black Knights, Shi Feng turned to Fire Dance and said, Fire, have Summer and the others join the fight as well. Everyone should get at least 3 saboteur kills. These Faux Saint saboteurs were absolute treasures. Although they did not drop any loot, the dark gray mist that they released was of incredible value not only to Tier 4 players but also Tier 3 players. Now that the era of Tier 4 had come, it would be best if he helped Alluring Summer and the others reach Tier 4 as well. Okay, I'll have them come right away. Fire Dance nodded and promptly contacted the mobile fortress. As Fire Dance was summoning Alluring Summer and the others, Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words suddenly approached Shi Feng. Guild Leader Black Flame, is it possible for you to sell us a dozen or so of these saboteurs? Unyielding Heart asked in embarrassment. We are willing to pay 1 complete Tier 3 legacy for each of Saboteur. There was no way the two of them wouldn't covet these faux Saint Saboteurs. With the help of that gray mist, they could increase their guild's peak experts' chances of reaching Tier 4 by a significant margin. At this stage of the game, the various superpowers were all in urgent need of Tier 4 combatants to defend their territories. If their two guilds could gain a few more Tier 4 players within a short period, they would survive these difficult times much more easily. Looking at the embarrassed expressions of the two people before him, Shi Feng chuckled and said, "Say no more. Your guilds have sacrificed a lot in helping Zero Wing resist the superpowers. You can each take 30 saboteurs as compensation. I don't need you to pay anything for them." Truthfully, he felt very grateful to Unyielding Soul and Crimson Emperor. If not for the help of these two guilds, Zero Wing couldn't have held the secret Covenant Tower until he returned. Thus, he didn't mind giving away a few faux Saint Saboteurs. Not to mention, if the two super first-rate guilds grew stronger, they would be of much greater help to Zero Wing as well. Most importantly, Zero Wing didn't have that many Tier 3 players who could make use of the Saboteur's Grey Mist. The Grey Mist could be described as icing on the cake. Like the Crystal of Souls and Soul Water, the Grey Mist was useful only to players with the potential to reach Tier 4. Meanwhile, there were fewer than 20 such players in the present Zero Wing. It also wouldn't serve any purpose to let these players gain more than 1 stack of the Grey Mist. The help they could gain for their promotion from 1 stack would be the same as what they could gain from multiple stacks. Hence, it would be much better to use the additional saboteurs to raise the levels of Fire Dance and the others instead. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Thank you, Guild Leader Black Flame. Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words were jubilant upon hearing Shi Feng's words. 60 saboteurs would be more than enough for their two guilds' peak experts. Subsequently, after around an hour of battle, Shi Feng and the others annihilated the faux Saint army. By then, Shi Feng's level had risen from 146 to 148, while Fire Dance and the other Tier 4 members of Zero Wing had risen to level 145. As for Alluring Summer and the other Zero Wing executives who were still stuck at Tier 3, they had risen to level 130 and above. Everyone had leveled up remarkably from this battle. After killing the faux Saint army, Windshadow handed a Tier 3 mana set equipment forging design to Shi Feng as agreed. And after receiving the forging design, Shi Feng released Awakened Abyss from Sky Spring City's prison and let 100 Ghosts' members leave intact once the World Mirror deactivated. With the end of the battle at the secret Covenant Tower and the disappearance of the World Mirror, news of this battle spread like wildfire. Chapter 28-29, Beast Emperor's Loot Fire Dragon Empire, Flame Dragon City. The faux Saint army got annihilated, and 100 ghosts surrendered? How is that possible? When the various superpowers learned about the outcome of the battle at the secret Covenant Tower, they were dumbstruck. After all, the forces attacking Zero Wing had included 1,000 mythic-ranked faux Saint monsters and the top combatants of 100 Ghosts, a mysterious guild that even the 5 great super guilds feared. Nevertheless, such a force had actually lost. Moreover, the loss had been an utter rout, a one-sided massacre. The various superpowers were especially shocked when they saw the video of the purifying light vaporizing a large chunk of the faux Saint army and heavily injuring every one of the faux Saint saboteurs. They felt as if the system was playing a cruel joke on them when they watched this attack. Meanwhile, inside Frost Heaven's residence, when Mushin read the report her subordinate sent her, she exclaimed in shock, "Amazing! As expected of Zero Wing." Frost Heaven had considered helping Zero Wing out of its predicament. However, after gaining a reserve spot for the 12 great guilds, Frost Heaven had faced many problems. Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire were especially troublesome. The two super guilds had clashed with Frost Heaven on numerous occasions in the Fire Dragon Empire after the competition. In addition, superpowers like Mythology and Miracle secretly interfered with Frost Heaven's operations. This made it incredibly difficult for Frost Heaven to spread its influence across the Fire Dragon Empire. If not for Frost Heaven garrisoning various major NPC cities in the Fire Dragon Empire and gaining a homeground advantage, the guild would have long since gotten torn to shreds. After all, Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire had incredibly deep roots in the Fire Dragon Empire. In fact, some of the Fire Dragon Empire's NPC forces had even allied with the two super guilds. Fortunately, Frost Heaven had also occupied the Snow Lion Kingdom, a coastal country. The kingdom provided Frost Heaven with a continuous supply of resources and funds, allowing the guild to keep fighting in the Fire Dragon Empire. A mobile fortress, is it? Hong Xinyuan also couldn't help feeling a little envious when he read the information regarding the small mobile fortress. I wonder when we will be able to obtain one of our own? According to the reports, with the offensive and defensive capabilities of the mobile fortress, it could survive in a level 140+ neutral map. This made it a dream facility of all superpowers at this stage of the game. Not only did level 140+ neutral maps allow players to level up much more quickly, but they also held various rare resources, legacies, ancient ruins, and even 7 Luminaries crystals. Originally, players could acquire 7 Luminaries crystals from only a few specific maps. However, all maps above level 140 had a considerable chance of spawning 7 Luminaries crystals. This was because the random team dungeons and time-limited regional dungeons that appeared in these maps all had a small chance of dropping 7 Luminaries crystals. However, level 140+ maps were incredibly dangerous. Not only did foreign energies that would rapidly corrode a player's body permeate these maps, but powerful monsters were also rife in them. Although level 140+ maps were not as dangerous as Forbidden Lands, beast tides frequently occurred there, regardless of night and day. Even Tier 4 experts would perish if they accidentally came across one of these beast tides and got surrounded. Most importantly, level 140+ maps were the main hunting ground of NPCs. Now that Zero Wing had the mobile fortress, Hong Xinyuan could already imagine just how much of an advantage the guild would have in the future. In fact, its complete control over the Secret Covenant Tower already provided it an advantage not even super guilds possessed. At this point, all Zero Wing needed to do was wait until it had a sufficiently large number of Tier 3 players. With ample strength, the guild could begin occupying various resource spots and NPC cities in God's domain. Eventually, Zero Wing might even become an existence rivaling the 5 great super guilds. At the same time, Cold Shadow in the distant Apocalypse Empire also received this shocking piece of news. Interesting. Even the Faux Saint Army and 100 Ghosts are helpless against them. Cold Shadow revealed a rare smile on her face when she read the report her subordinate sent her. After suffering such a miserable loss, Lu Xingluo will most likely lose his position as heir. What should we do now, Vice Guild Leader? White Feather asked worriedly. The guild leader sent us here to lay a solid foundation on the eastern continent so that we can dominate both continents in the future. Yet, Zero Wing is growing stronger while Miracle has half a foot in the grave. Don't worry. So long as we complete the task Lord Odin gave us, mythology will no longer face any hindrances on the eastern continent, Cold Shadow said with a faint smile. If we're lucky, we might even get to take over Zero Wing cities. After all, the eastern continent's various powers don't have much time left. Not much time left? White Feather was slightly surprised to hear Cold Shadow's words. However, she quickly recalled something and asked, has Lord Odin succeeded on his side already? Mitchum. The eastern continent will become the first battlefield. Cold Shadow nodded. When that time comes, the eastern continent's various powers can only watch as they gradually perish. Even Zero Wing with its mobile fortress won't be spared. Twin Towers Kingdom, Sky Spring City, because of Zero Wing's landslide victory, the various superpowers that had forcibly occupied Sky Spring City fell into dismay. They never thought that all their efforts would end up being for naught. Unlike the superpowers members, though, the members of Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor cheered and celebrated like maniacs. After all, the battle at the Secret Covenant Tower had left their 3 guilds with complete ownership of the tower. Meanwhile, with the Tier 3 legacies the tower produced, the number of Tier 3 experts in their 3 guilds would skyrocket. Eventually, even super guilds would be no match for them. In fact, given enough time, their 3 guilds wouldn't even have to worry about NPC forces anymore. Elder Windshadow, why did you give the Tier 3 mana set equipment forging design to Zero Wing? That will just make Zero Wing even stronger and drastically affect our plans. The guild leader will definitely reprimand us once we return, asked Awakened Abyss, who had just been released from Sky Spring City's prison. He had been rendered speechless when he heard of Windshadow's actions. The Tier 3 mana set equipment could allow Tier 3 players to combat Tier 4 players. Any guild that could mass-produce this set would become a huge threat in the game. In fact, the set's forging design could even be considered more valuable than the mobile fortress. After all, the mobile fortress could secure only one location at a time. In comparison, having multiple Tier 4 combatants allowed a guild to secure multiple positions simultaneously. Abyss, do you still not understand Elder Windshadow's personality? Long Day suddenly asked, smiling. Do you really think he would let Zero Wing take advantage of him? What do you mean? Awakened Abyss asked in wonder. With how powerful the Tier 3 mana set equipment is, do you think Zero Wing can mass-produce it just by having its forging design? Chuckling, Long Day explained, the minimum requirement to forge the set is an advanced master forger. In addition, the forger in question has to be at the advanced magician standard. Most importantly, the set needs incredibly rare materials to produce. Mana adamantite is hardly available even on our side, let alone here. And even if we assume Zero Wing can actually manufacture the set, there is still the Tier 4 strength requirement for equipping it. If Zero Wing can't fulfill even one of these points, that forging design will be no better than a piece of scrap paper. Upon listening to Long Day's explanation, Awakened Abyss immediately came to a realization. Smiling, he said, in other words, what Zero Wing got is merely a piece of scrap paper? That's right. That Black Flame thinks that he made a huge profit, but that's far from being the case in reality, Long Day said, nodding. However, we should leave this place quickly. The guild leader notified us that this continent is soon to be doomed. Once we finish our tasks here, we need to return as soon as possible. It would be bad if we got dragged into the mess. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. I understand. I'll go complete the tasks the guild leader gave me together with Jade Leaf, Awakened Abyss said, growing even more excited after hearing Long Day's subsequent words. Previously, he had still been entertaining thoughts of revenge on Zero Wing. However, they now seemed superfluous. While 100 Ghosts' members were preparing to leave Sky Spring City, inside the distant mobile fortress, Shi Feng was shocked when he inspected the items Beast Emperor dropped. How did this thing end up in his hands? For a time, Shi Feng couldn't help doubting his eyes. This was because both items Beast Emperor dropped were extraordinary. One of them was even something Shi Feng had been searching for all this time. The Treasure of Fire, Purification Crown. Chapter 2830 Treasure of Fire. Shi Feng couldn't help growing ecstatic as he looked at the Purification Crown. Finding the 7 treasures wasn't easy. Even though he could use the Golden Stigmata's detect skill to locate the 7 treasures, the skill had a limited range. Moreover, there were many ways one could block the effects of the skill. Take the Purification Crown in his hands, for example. Neither detect's active or passive detection effects were reacting to it at all. Hence, obtaining the Treasure of Fire from killing Beast Emperor came as an absolute surprise to Shi Feng. He tapped his finger on the Purification Crown and called up its attribute panel, curious about the functions of this legendary Treasure of Fire. Purification Crown, fragmented legendary rank item, a fragment of the Treasure of Fire. However, due to being sealed by the evil god, the fragment is incapable of exhibiting its true power. Skill 1 Seed of Flame, can control and transform all flames into seeds of flame. Upon absorbing the seed of flame, the user will be able to manipulate the flame used to create the seed of flame. Can transform up to Tier 4 flames. Cooldown, 3 days. Skill 2 Purification Fire, Expend 300 fire-attributed magic crystals to produce a purification fire. The purification fire has a 20% chance of elevating a creature's life rating and an 80% chance of thoroughly extinguishing a creature. Skill 3 Divine Purification. Expend God crystals to purify the purification crown. A total of 20 God crystals are required to purify the purification crown. Current number of absorbed God crystals, 0. This item is corroded by the evil god's power. The golden stigmata can purify the evil energy corroding this item with the help of God crystals. Cannot be destroyed. Has a chance of dropping on death. No wonder Beast Emperor was able to create so many mythic foe saints. He's been relying on this crown's ability. Realization dawned upon Shi Feng when he finished reading the purification crown's attributes. He had to admit that every one of the 7 treasures was heaven-defying. The purification crown's purification fire skill was an absolute treasure when it came to elevating a creature's potential. Its only flaw was the 80% chance of causing the death of the target creature. Unless one had already exhausted their latent potential and were still seeking further improvement, making use of the purification fire should be their last resort. Only someone like Beast Emperor, who could mass-produce foe saint monsters easily, could use the purification crown without worries. So long as he managed to produce even one mythic-ranked foe saint monster, it wouldn't matter even if he expended hundreds of Grand Lord-ranked foe saint monsters in the process. After all, producing Grand Lord-ranked foe saint monsters was an incredibly simple process. The only real problem Beast Emperor had was finding the necessary fire-attributed magic crystals. If the purification fire skill required ordinary magic crystals instead, Beast Emperor would have most likely had tens or even hundreds of thousands of mythic-ranked foe saint monsters. This also explained why Beast Emperor had created an organization like Saint's Hand to support him. This purification fire really is a gem. Even though its success rate is only 20%, the possibility of elevating a creature's life rating makes the risk completely worthwhile. Shi Feng sighed ruefully as he looked at the effects of the purification fire. The term creature did not refer to just foe saint monsters. It encompassed mounts and NPCs. In fact, the purification fire worked on players as well, only with significantly diminished effects. At most, it could raise a player's basic attributes and physique. It couldn't help players in getting promoted to Tier 4 or above. However, it was a different story for mounts and NPCs. For mounts and NPCs, improving their life ratings would significantly increase their chances of completing their promotions. At this time, though, Shi Feng dared not experiment with the purification fire. At the very least, he wouldn't do so while the skill's success rate was only at 20%. After all, flying mounts and personal guards with high growth potential were not easy to find. If he got unlucky and ended up burning one out of existence, he would definitely die of regret. Subsequently, Shi Feng set his sights on the purification crown's first skill. This seed of flame is good stuff. A powerful flame might be meaningless for ordinary players, but it was a divine tool for lifestyle players, particularly forgers and alchemists. Having a powerful flame would increase their production success rate considerably. This was especially true for mysterious flames. Even a Tier 1 mysterious flame would be of significant help to players. The only problem was that absorbing a mysterious flame was an excruciatingly painful process, something not just anyone could endure. Moreover, the stronger the mysterious flame, the more painful the absorption process would be. Previously, when Shi Feng had bound the Tier 3 Purple Thunder Flame, he had suffered immensely. Given the level of pain he experienced, he doubted that specialized lifestyle players could absorb a Tier 3 mysterious flame. After all, unlike himself, specialized lifestyle players tended to have less tolerance for pain. However, the Seed of Flame skill could dampen this excruciating absorption process by transforming flames into seeds of flame. Absorbing a seed of flame was significantly less painful than absorbing a flame directly. Players would have an easier time taking control over a flame. Of course, the best part about the Seed of Flame skill wasn't the fact that it could turn mysterious flames into seeds of flame. The skill's description clearly stated that it could transform all flames into seeds of flame. Flames didn't refer to just mysterious flames. There were other types of flames, such as the flames spat out by monsters and naturally occurring flames. In other words, the Seed of Flame skill was a heaven-defying skill capable of creating mysterious flames. All Shifeng needed to do was search for powerful flames and convert them into mysterious flames. However, as the Purification Crown was sealed, the most it could create were Tier 4 mysterious flames. Even so, this was already an incomparably precious ability. In God's domain, the rarity of Tier 3 mysterious flames was on par with that of fragmented legendary items. As for Tier 4 mysterious flames, they were basically the stuff of legends. Nevertheless, the Purification Crown was actually capable of creating Tier 4 mysterious flames. One could see just how heaven-defying this ability was. Of course, finding a flame that could be converted into a Tier 4 mysterious flame wouldn't be an easy task. After all, existences capable of producing such powerful flames weren't a dime a dozen. However, Shifeng would be satisfied so long as he could produce a couple of Tier 3 mysterious flames. For the candlelight trading firm's lifestyle players, being able to own a Tier 3 mysterious flame was something that only happened in their dreams. Shifeng took out the Tier 4 Hellfire, an excited expression appearing on his face. I initially planned to wait a little while longer before absorbing this, but I think I can give it a try now. He had been looking forward to absorbing the Hellfire for a long time now. However, he also understood that taking control of a Tier 4 mysterious flame would be unimaginably difficult. The process would have an extremely high demand on his concentration and pain tolerance. If he failed to absorb the Hellfire, he might even suffer a backlash. Hence, after obtaining the Hellfire, he did not dare casually absorb it. Moreover, after he had reached Tier 4, his soul had been strengthened significantly, which allowed him to resist the soul chain's threat for a much longer period. There had been no need for him to take such a risk. However, now that he had the Purification Crown, he wouldn't have to worry about the risks of absorbing the Hellfire. Subsequently, Shifeng used the Purification Crown on the Hellfire. The crown immediately released a dazzling radiance, and a golden mist enveloped the Hellfire. Upon sensing the threat from the Purification Crown, the Hellfire began resisting violently, its aura flaring until it rivaled that of superior mythic monsters. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. However, the Purification Crown was one of the 7 treasures, an item carefully crafted by the goddess of space, an ancient god. Even if it was only a fragment of the original treasure of fire, its power wasn't something a Tier 4 mysterious flame could resist. 20 seconds later, the Purification Crown devoured the Hellfire completely and transformed it into a dark gray seed of flame. In its current form, the Hellfire's power was drastically suppressed. System: do you wish to absorb the seed of Hellfire? Absorb. Upon seeing the system prompt, Shifeng chose to absorb the Tier 4 seed of flame without hesitation. Chapter 28:31 Tier 4 Mysterious Flames Effects. As soon as Shifeng chose to absorb the seed of flame, the dark gray seed in his palm turned into streaks of light that merged with his body. Immediately afterward, Shifeng couldn't help gritting his teeth. It hurt so much. The pain he currently felt was far beyond what he had felt when he absorbed the Tier 3 Purple Thunder Flame. It was like his blood was boiling and millions of ants were nibbling at his bones. If not for the recent breakthrough in his concentration, he would have most likely failed to endure this pain. The next moment, a loading bar showing his fusion progress with the seed of Hellfire appeared before him. The loading bar filled up at a snail's pace, increasing by only 1% every dozen seconds or so. The pain is already so unbearable even with the help of a seed of flame. It's no wonder so few players managed to control a Tier 4 mysterious flame in the past. Realization dawned upon Shifeng as he looked at the slowly rising fusion bar. Any normal person would lose their mind if they had to endure this pain for even a second, yet this pain was only the result of absorbing a Tier 4 seed of flame. He couldn't even begin to imagine how much pain directly absorbing a Tier 4 mysterious flame would involve. At this point, Shi Feng suspected that the people who had successfully absorbed Tier 4 mysterious flames in his previous life had done so using special means like he did. After all, he had honed his pain tolerance for 10 years in the game. In this life, he had even developed his concentration beyond what he had in his previous life. Despite that, he still found absorbing even a weakened Tier 4 mysterious flame unbearable. What would it take to absorb an unaltered Tier 4 mysterious flame? 3%, 10%, 30%. Hold on. I must hold on. At this point, Shi Feng was gritting his teeth, and his eyes were bloodshot. His complexion was also unprecedentedly pale. And worse, as the fusion progressed, its rate of increment gradually slowed down. Even after 2 whole hours had gone by, the fusion bar had reached only 73%. In addition, when the fusion crossed 60%, the seed of flame within him began radiating powerful mental assaults every second, battering his sea of consciousness. The subsequent mental assault that hit him at 74% nearly made him collapse. His consciousness began blurring, and he felt as if he was about to lose control of his body. This won't do. I need to think of a way to resist these mental assaults. Otherwise, I won't last until the end. While fusing with a mysterious flame, players had to remain conscious throughout the process. Otherwise, the fusion would be deemed a failure. Upon thinking up to this point, Shi Feng began applying his mental defense technique against the seed of flame's mental assaults, gathering his focus into a single point and stealing his mind. While this technique worked wonders initially, after the fusion progress reached 80%, the seed of flame seemingly noticed his trick. Immediately afterward, the seed began releasing mental assaults at a much higher rate, going from once per second to twice per second, then even increasing to 3, 4, 5 times per second. The frequency of the mental assaults continuously escalated, the seed of flame adamant in breaking Shi Feng's mind. It can even play such a move? Shi Feng was stupefied by this situation. Faced with these high-frequency mental assaults, Shi Feng dared not relax for even a moment. However, maintaining his mental defense technique also made him feel indescribably uncomfortable. This technique was akin to a person flexing their muscles. While one could harden one's muscles by flexing them, it would be exhausting to keep one's muscles flexed for long periods. Likewise, Shi Feng couldn't keep his focus condensed for long periods. Moreover, as his mental defense technique was much more complex than the flexing one's muscles, the time he could maintain it was even shorter. 83%, 87%, 92%. The more frequent the mental assaults were, the less time he had to breathe. At some point, his mind even began feeling suffocated. Is it still not done? Looking at the fusion bar, Shi Feng felt as if he was on the brink of collapse. At this time, his body pains already felt insignificant compared to the mental suffocation. In fact, his body was already ignoring the burning pain the seed of flame inflicted. Now, the only thing his mind could think of was finding an opportunity to catch a breath. Just when Shi Feng felt as if he would die from suffocation, the system's indifferent voice entered his ears. System, the Hellfire's fusion is complete. The Hellfire is now bound as player Yi Feng's personal property. System, congratulations. You have been tempered by the Hellfire. All basic attributes increased by 300 points, all basic attributes increased by 10%, physique improved by 20%, reaction speed improved by 20%, mental control improved by 40%, fire and ice resistances plus 150, and control over fire-type mana improved by 20%. Shi Feng inhaled deeply upon hearing the system notification. When air filled his lungs again, he felt revived. After relaxing his mind, he could feel the Hellfire's energy spreading throughout his body. His originally depleted concentration also began recovering crazily. So, this is the power of a Tier 4 mysterious flame? At this moment, Shi Feng felt reborn. His basic attributes might not have increased by much after absorbing the Hellfire, but his acuity of the world of God's domain had undergone a drastic change. He felt as if he had stepped into a whole new world. His concentration standard, in particular, had gone from the Tier 4 intermediate standard to the Tier 4 peak standard. Aside from the improvements to his mind and body, the Hellfire's active power was similarly astonishing. Hellfire, Tier 4 Mysterious Flame, when activated, improves destructive power by 100% and effects of fire-type skills and spells by 100%, grants attacks a 150% mental assault modifier, and increases the success rate of forging, alchemy, and cooking by 25%. Upon reading the Tier 4 Hellfire's active effects, Shifeng finally understood why Tier 4 Mysterious Flames were regarded as legends in God's domain. The Tier 4 Hellfire was a heaven-defying tool for both combat and lifestyle players. The Hellfire's ability to add mental assaults to attacks was especially amazing, far more amazing than purely physical or magical attacks. After all, there was no clear attribute for mental assaults in God's domain. Likewise, there were no in-game methods for resisting mental assaults. Players could only rely on their own minds to withstand such assaults. Players lacking in mental fortitude could lose control over their bodies after suffering just one strike. And even if they didn't, they would still feel disoriented and their bodies uncomfortable. Now that Shifeng had the Hellfire in his possession, he dared to confront even superior mythic monsters of the same level directly. However, rather than the combat bonuses the Hellfire provided, what Shifeng paid more attention to were its supportive effects. The Hellfire's 25% increase to production success rate was something even Grandmaster Forgers would desire greatly. The higher the quality of an item, the lower its production success rate. Normally, the theoretical production success rate provided by the system was the highest success rate achievable. However, even after reaching the Grandmaster standard, players still wouldn't be capable of reaching this upper limit, and this was after high-quality tools were included in the equation. Not to mention, tools that increased production success rates were less effective the higher the quality of the item being produced was. However, Mysterious Flames were an exception. Their effects remained the same regardless of the quality of the item being produced. With the Tier 4 Hellfire, I can probably produce epic weapons at a 30% success rate now. Shifeng felt indescribably excited. When he obtained the Tier 3 Mana Set Equipment Forging design, he had decided to set it aside temporarily. One of the reasons for doing so was his disinclination to waste precious materials. After all, mana adamantite was incredibly precious. In the modern God's domain, its rarity almost rivaled that of 7 luminaries crystals. Secondly, he wished to use mana iron ore as a replacement. However, he needed mana iron ingots of considerably high purity to accomplish this. Although the Tier 3 Purple Thunder Flame possessed excellent smelting capabilities, it still couldn't smelt mana iron ore into special ranked mana iron ingots, producing only advanced mana iron ingots at best. Only a Tier 4 Mysterious Flame could accomplish such a feat. Of course, using special mana iron ingots to produce the Tier 3 mana set equipment would degrade the set slightly. However, the end result would still let Tier 3 players hold their ground against mythic monsters. As Shifeng was contemplating how to mass-produce the Tier 3 mana set equipment, he suddenly received a call from Fire Dance. After accepting the call request, Shifeng asked, "Did something happen over at Sky Spring City?" News of the battle at the Secret Covenant Tower had shaken the entire God's domain. At this point, it was no exaggeration to say that no player forces in the Twin Towers Kingdom would dare go against Zero Wing. Logically, there shouldn't be any problems there. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. No. It's just that there are too many people applying to join Zero Wing right now, Fire Dance replied with a bitter smile. We gained over 500,000 new members after just half a day, including over 10,000 Tier 3 players. All of the top-tier weapons and equipment we got from the battle in Sky Spring City before have already been exchanged. If we don't replenish the warehouse, we won't be able to expand our forces further even if we want to. I understand. Shifeng smiled at Fire Dance's words and said, I still have some epic items as well as a bunch of level 130+ weapons and equipment. They should be enough to tide us over for now. I'll figure out a follow-up solution later. Fire Dance simply responded with a helpless nod. With the number of guild members waiting to exchange for weapons and equipment, A few hundred pieces of level 130 plus weapons and equipment wouldn't make much of a difference. They would most likely be gone in half an hour. However, as she was pondering how the guild could acquire more weapons and equipment, a massive batch of weapons and equipment suddenly appeared in Zero Wing's guild warehouse. These weapons and equipment were none other than the epic weapons and equipment Feng had purchased in the ancient god's domain. There were also the various weapons and equipment he got from grinding at the anti-magic volcano, which numbered over 6,000, with even the most inferior piece being level 130 bronze equipment. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.